of Hira. The angel came to him in it and asked him to read. The prophet replied, I do not know how to read. The angel caught me forcefully and pressed me so hard that I could not bear it anymore. He then released me and asked me to read. And I replied, I do not know how to read. Whereupon he caught me again and pressed me a second time until I could not bear it anymore. Then he released me and asked me again to read. But again I replied, I do not know how to read. Or, what shall I read? Thereupon he caught me for the third time and pressed me and then released me and said, read in the name of your Lord, who has created all that exists. He has created man from a clot. Read, and your Lord is most generous, up to that which he knew not. Then Muhammad returned with the inspiration, his neck muscles twitching with terror till he entered upon Khadijah and said, cover me, cover me. They covered him till his fear is over. And then he said, O Khadijah, what is wrong with me? Then he told her everything that had happened and said, I fear that something may happen to me. Khadijah said, never, but have the glad tidings, for by Allah, Allah will never disgrace you as you keep good relations with your kin and kith. Speak the truth, help the poor and the destitute, serve your guests generously, and assist the deserving, calamity-afflicted ones. Khadijah then accompanied him to her cousin Waraqah bin Nawfal bin Asad bin Abdul Uzza, long name, who during the pre-Islamic period became a Christian and used to write the writing with Hebrew letters. He would write from the gospel in Hebrew as much as Allah wished him to write. He was an old man and had lost his weight. Khadijah said to Waraqah, listen to the story of your nephew, O my cousin. Waraqah said, O my nephew, what have you seen? Allah's apostle described whatever he had seen. Waraqah said, this is the same one who keeps the secrets, Angel Gabriel, whom Allah has sent to Moses. I wish I were young and could live up to the time where your people would turn you out. Muhammad asked, will they drive me out? Waraqah replied in the affirmative and said, anyone, man, who came with something similar to what you have brought was treated with hostility. And if I should remain alive till the day when you will be turned out, then I would support you strongly. But after a few days, Waraqah died, and the divine inspiration was also paused for a while. And the prophet became so sad, as we have heard, that he intended several times to throw himself from the tops of high mountains. And every time he went up to the top of a mountain in order to throw himself down, Gabriel would appear before him and say, O Muhammad, you are indeed Allah's apostle in truth. Whereupon his heart will become quiet and he will calm down and will return home. And whenever the period of the calming of the inspiration used to become long, he would do as before. But when he used to reach the top of a mountain, Gabriel would appear before him and say to him what he has said before. There are a number of slight variations to this story, related by different people, describing Muhammad's visitation by a spirit, identifying himself as the angel Gabriel. These stories do not always agree with each other in perfect detail, but on the whole, a complete picture can be drawn of Muhammad's initial experience with the spirit and his reactions after. And that's what I just presented. From this encounter, Muslims believe that Allah, through the Archangel Gabriel, gave the collection of revelations to Muhammad that are now preferred as the Islamic scriptures.
Shalom, shalom, family. As always, at the 10-minute mark, we're going to say the Lord's Prayer. So bow with me as we say the Lord's Prayer. Our Father in heaven, honored be thy name. May thy kingdom come. May thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us each day our daily bread, and forgive us of our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us on a righteous path, and guard us from the evil one. In your name we pray. Amen. Amen, amen, family. I am very excited because I just found a video. So I'm doing a strange live. Right now it's 3 hours usually after I do my live, but I work night shifts, so I overslept today. I woke up at like 5 o'clock. But I wanted to go over this video because if you remember, let me go to YouTube real fast. Beloved family, all we do is bring out truth. And I'm going to show you right now, this video alone is going to be by a professional, someone who studies genetics. And I'm going to show you that everything that I showed you is 100% true. And I found, and what I showed you, I found based off of my own studies, because I know a little bit about the medical field and everything and how to understand some of these things. But what I'm going to show you is that what we looked at those 2 other days is confirmed. I'm going to show you that right now. I'm going to show you that in this video here. Let me just close this and this. All right. So I'm gonna play a video for you. If you haven't seen this, this is a great channel, Answers in Genesis. He's doing a genetic study on, as you can see, can we identify the Jews genetically? I want you to see this because this is everything that I was just talking about in these notes when I was talking about how the Jewish, the people Ashkenazi, they're actually Turks. Just to show a little bit of the reminder. Let me stop saying, oh. I'm gonna show you a quick reminder of this. Go back down. Remember, just to get into it, we was looking at a certain Y chromosome of the J line, and that's what I'm going to show you today, the J line. And why is the J line important? Because that's also one of the major lines that they say, as you see, we demonstrate that 46.1 of the, as this Kohanim, this talk about the line of supposed Aaron. They saying that is that JP58. Now, if you're not familiar with some of these codes, JP58, I talked a lot about that. That's that same chromosome, the M267, which I was talking about highly into, because that chromosome is known in the Khazars, in the Turks. That's one of the major chromosomes that's known in the Turks. Let me just show you something. I even did a quick historical, so you can see this is going to be the same P58, M267. I'm going to show you something real fast. The reason why it's important because they say this is what the, what you call them, the line of Aaron, supposed line of Aaron has. But I did a breakdown of this, and I showed you the history and the genetics and the information to show you that they are indeed Turks, which makes them what you seen earlier, the converted people of the Khazars. For the sake of understanding, let me actually open up another one because I need to show you that historical reference. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to show you a video. I'm going to show you a video on Answers of Genesis. These people are very skillful when it comes to a lot of things of science. So that's what you're going to see today. A very, very interesting information that goes over what I just told you. Just open up this one right here. Just to read you that quote, because you're going to see it's the same years. You're going to see the years in the genetic information. You're going to see that comes to the same years. 740 AD. That's when the Khazars, which are the Turks, converted, and they actually accepted Judaism. They spoke Yiddish. The language they spoke was Yiddish. What we're going to do is look at that. We're going to look at these things. Let me go down and show you something. Let me just go to the Avars and show you something of the Avars. So here's the Avars. I showed you a real quick thing of the Avars, how they came in from the Huns. Then you've seen the Alans, and then they settled in these areas. And we already confirmed that Alans are also the Scythians. And you can see they settled in these areas. And what I'm going to show you today is that the genetics that I just showed you in the other studies, they're already confirmed. I've never seen this video, but I seen it yesterday, and I want to show you it today to show you that it completely agrees with what I was just showing before. So For things that I'm gonna, if you have any questions, ask. This is gonna be very, very deep. So pay attention to what it's gonna talk about just to get the understanding. It's gonna be talking about that J line that I talked about before. That's also in those Khazars. So we're gonna talk about this in certain timestamps. So this one, 1818, I'm gonna show you this part first.
So this so-called Jewish lineage doesn't have a time frame that fits Moses and Aaron. Doesn't have a time frame that fits many of the arguments made in this paper. So let me take this off the screen momentarily and return.
Real quick, you're just starting off right in the middle. Basically, what he just said, he basically saying when he's looking at the Jewish genetics, he's saying there's a problem. There's a problem. It doesn't fit what the biblical narrative is. And watch him go into it. Watch what he shows here.
Turn to the question of what is this group J? Yes, it's found in Jews. Timing isn't quite what the paper claimed it was. What is the explanation, though, for this group J that seems to have a bullseye concentration in the Middle East? Could there still be something here that's related to the Jews? Surprisingly, one of the keys to understanding the history of this lineage comes from a study that didn't even sample the Middle East. This first study we looked at early on in these episodes, the 1,000 Genomes Project, the one that sampled the major locations of where the people are, didn't even have lineages in the Middle East. Yet it did have members of group J. And this was historically in my own study of the Y chromosome, one of the first studies I examined and one of the first puzzles I had trouble solving. Group J in this study is heavily populated by, if you can just see the colors here, gold and green, Europeans and peoples of South Asia. We'll zoom in here.
So I want you to pay attention to this part. Basically, he's just letting us know that a lot of the groups of this genetic line is going to be Asiatic and European, which we confirmed because I wanted to show you this because the ones right here, the reason why this is important is because if you don't know, let me go up real fast. We know 100% that they are the Khazars, a branch that broken off from the Gog Turks, a group that came in the Middle East. Now it's important to understand when we say Middle East, this is a middle. Let me actually open up a map. I don't know why I didn't open up this earlier. I like to have these things open because it's important to make sure you know your maps, to learn your maps and everything. And it's good for knowing locations and different things like that. It's always good for those things. But let me show you something back here. All right. So the reason why I say this is important because this is history that's quite ignored. Now, the Gog Turks, these actually are a group that was known in history being Gog and Magog. It's important to understand they sat in the middle between the Chinese empires and what you would say as a European empire, such as Rome and Greece and things like that. So they were like a mix that sat in the middle. They also came here. I showed the history yesterday, how they basically took over the area where the Scythians were. And they became right here, this area right here, they became Khazars. They became Khazars shortly after that. Now, they didn't call themselves Khazars. People call them Khazars because they land in a certain area. Let's see if this thing opens. All right. They land in a certain area right here where they had certain rivers where they basically named them after these rivers. Let me see if I can zoom in to the name of this one. This was not the one I wanted to zoom in on. Let's see, where is it? Still getting the upper rivers down. I'm gonna learn these rivers up here. But if you notice here, there's a river system here. And then this river system, let me go to this right here. This river system right here is why they got the name Khazars, because the area where they settled at, that's why they were named that area. And you see that river? We just looked at that one. That's the one we zoomed in on Don. But this is the main reason why they had those names, because of this area that they settled in. Now, it's important to understand that the reason why we're looking at this is because you're going to see in this genetic study that the claims that are being made are not matching up with historic evidence, nor genetic evidence, nor linguistic evidence. And that's what I'm going to show you today. You'll see the Avars. These are the Khazars. I'm going to show you, and these are Turks. These are Turks. These came from the line of the Gog Turks, where you can see right here. These came from the Gog Turks, which I showed a little earlier, how I showed you how they broke apart and they became a piece. Now watch what happens here. He's going to say the same thing just to give you the understanding really early. He's going to tell you that the Ashkenazi are Khazars. Remember, he's doing this unbiasedly, as I did this unbiasedly, and I found this evidence to be true. Now, watch what happens here. Let's pause real fast.
Just momentarily so you can see them. Yes, you have peoples in the Americas, but again, I think this is carryover from Europe. Sadly, most Latin Americans have.
I'm going to go to another timestamp on this one. 2920. I'm just going to go here, because this just goes over the genetics and everything and the lines of all those things and how they're connected. Go up. What's interesting about it is that right about here, it's going to talk about the connection. So right now it's connecting, saying this will be a European, this would be Asian, European, Asian, European, Asian, European, Asian. Go up a little bit.
Have common ancestors in the 700s.
Okay, now note the year here. AD 700s. Now it's saying that these clusters are noticed in the 700s. AD. Let's go here. That matches with history. That perfectly matches with history as is recorded. It said many of the Khazars and their kin were converted by Jewish missionaries, and they formally accepted Judaism in 700 AD. Right, so it matches with history, and let's keep going. Let's keep going a little bit on this one.
To 1100s. And early on in my study of the Y chromosome, I thought, what in the world is this? Is this now evidence against the Y chromosome clock? I can't think of anything that connects these sections of the world together. And then I came across this study, the one we just mentioned, that has samples of the Middle East. And you can see in red here, there's a lot of red. I'm like, oh, okay, finally, this is the explanation. This must be why Europe and India are connected. The connection must run through the Middle East. And the geography of J, or at least the fact that it runs through the Middle East, reminded me immediately of the Islamic conquests, beginning in the 600s AD with Muhammad and his followers, and eventually spread through North Africa, got into Europe. You can see it extends to the edge of India, is in Pakistan. Aha, this seems to fit then these clusters. But then I got stuck on the dates again, as I looked into this history more so. Yes, Muhammad and his followers, and the people thereafter, these Arab Muslims, got as far east and west as is shown here. But by the mid-800s, the eastern part of their empire began to be reconquered by Central Asian peoples. So that by the mid-800s, this part of the Islamic empire was being cut off from India. And before the time of Columbus, the 1100s, the Muslims were being pushed out of Spain. So if we're getting cut off here in the 800s from South Asia, how in the world do you connect this part of the world to this part of the world up into the 1100s? This is where I began to scratch my head again. Now what? How do you explain this? What's the history of group J? How do you connect Europe and India? In fact, it turns out that this Europe-India connection was one of the keys to unraveling the surprising explanation for group J, and by extension, a good chunk of the Jewish population in the world today. Let's go back to India, because this is where one of the keys to understanding it emerges.
So I like this guy. He kind of breaks it down, working his way there, but I'm just going to give you the answers, because he goes through a lot of examples and he says, is it this one? Is it this one? This one? And then he finds out what's actually going on. Watch what he goes. So you see what he's saying right there, the Turks? Watch this. Watch this. I want you to see this, because it's going to get very, very, this is what I was talking about. This is exactly what I was talking about.
But the history books will talk about the Turkish invasion of India, because many of the members of these armies, as well as some of the Arab armies, were manned by slaves. In Egypt especially, there were slaves who were being enlisted in the Muslim armies. And in the Iranian leadership, leading to the Delhi Sultanate, there were massive numbers of Turks as part of this army. And so history books will talk about the Turkish invasion of India that gave rise to the Delhi Sultanate. Well, 1200s, this is now much closer to the dates that are relevant. And what's even more intriguing is it's the Turks that are responsible for pushing the Arab Muslims back towards the Middle East. It's the Seljuk Turks who in the thousands AD are overrunning the Middle East. Now, if you're like me, you hear Turks and you think modern day Turkey. Their origins are actually here in Central Asia, and this history is part of the explanation for how they got to Turkey. This is 1000s AD, and again, a different group of Turks is now coming down into India 100 or so years later. So this split between these eventual Turkish peoples and those who come into India happens right around 1100 AD. Turks don't stay in the Middle East, though. They're overrun within a century or two by the world's greatest empire, the Mongols. Notice, though, that even though the Mongols skirt India and essentially cut off this part of the world from India, and of course conquer much of Central Asia, get into Eastern Europe, get into the Middle East, they don't quite conquer all of Turkey, and the Turkish peoples persist in Western Turkey. And in fact, they throw off the Mongols and begin to reconquer again, and last for several hundred years under the Ottoman Empire, the Ottoman Turkish Empire.
So few people know this. A lot of people, when they think of the Ottoman Empire, they think of the Ishmaelites or Arabs, but actually most of the Ottoman Empire was actually Turks. A lot of the people who ran the Ottoman Empire were actually Turks. They actually pushed the Moors out, which were the original Ishmaelites. They pushed the Moors out, which they were a darker lineage. But now the Turks, they're more of a lighter, like a European, Asiatic look. They actually are the ones that's going to be in these areas, and they're going to be the ones that's basically absorbing these areas and becoming the main power over here. You will notice the Turks became, a lot of them were Islamic, and a lot of the Turks are actually the Ashkenazi. Watch what happens here. They're going to give you the understanding for this, and I went over this in those two previous videos to go over this in great detail, and now I'm showing you that someone else who understands these things and works on these things, he's going to confirm it as well. And remember, I did this before I even seen this. Watch what happens here.
Which rules, notice here, parts of Europe, the Balkan Peninsula, they're in the Middle East, parts of North Africa, and they're in both Middle East and in Europe for several hundred years. They're in one or the other for longer than this. Of course, they're in Turkey in the 1300s. Notice, though, that they're in the Middle East into the 1900s. Think back to history that might be more familiar. World War I, they're one of the World War I powers, the Ottoman Empire down here. You can see some of the other, perhaps more familiar entities during World War I up in this map. My point is the highlight here, Turkish people here right into the modern era, and they're connecting Europe down here. And the connection of the Turkish people to India goes back to the split between the Seljuks and whoever these other Turkish people were, going back in the Delhi Sultanate back in the 1100s. So notice how the realm of the Ottoman Empire, getting down into the Middle East, and again, this is eventually cut off. Go back to the previous slide here. You can see how much it's decreased by the 1900s, but it's still extending down here to the Middle East. This has a very intriguing geographic echo in the concentration of Group J in the Middle East and elsewhere today. The Ottoman Empire seems to explain the concentration today, and the history of the Turks seems to explain why we can have connections here and here, and the lack of a heavy Turkish presence in either of these places in recent history might explain why it's such a low concentration there. It fits the timing of the splits in these clusters, and here's how, just to make it clearer why. Why would there be a Turkish connection?
Remember what I was saying? Watch what happens here. You're going to see it from a geneticist. Watch what he says here. Watch what happens here. If you have any questions, ask. Please ask live, and we'll go over those things in great, enormous detail. Khazars. Remember I was talking about the Khazars and what this is saying right here? What happened with the Khazars? It's let us know that. This even has the old writings, right? The Khazars, many of the Khazars. This writing, this paper right here is 1933, right here. Conquest of a continent, or the expansion of races in America, right? Now let's understand this. This actually tells us, watch what it tells us about these certain groups. It actually says a mixture of Slavs, right? Slavs is close to the Turkish tribes and everything. It's important to understand it actually on this writing, it actually tells us this. Look what it says right here when it talks about the Khazars. It says they converted to Judaism, right? In 740 AD. It is doubtful whether there is a single drop of old Palestinian Semitic-speaking Hebrew blood among these East European Jews. Now, watch what happens here. I want you to see what's going to happen here as we go over this genetic information. Watch what happens here as I was talking about this. So Khazars, you can see right there just saying, Khazar is the same thing for the sake of understanding. And we have broke this down in history, how we showed where it came from. Now watch this. Watch what's going to happen here. And I'm going to show you something that's going to be just epic at the end. Watch what happens.
To Europe in the 700s, because I said there's some clusters here that separate in the 700s. Well, recall from previous episodes that there's a steady stream of Central Asian peoples into Europe from the 500s, 700s, and one of the 700s peoples is a Turkish group. The Oghuz peoples moving from Central Asia into Europe are Turkish peoples. They're not the only Turkish peoples. There are Turkish people who stuck around Central Asia and became then part of the Turkish armies that came into India. These are not the only Turkish people. There was a split between whoever these people were and the Seljuk Turks in the thousands. So that would explain the 1100 split as they go this way, and these other Seljuk Turks go this way, and these two groups are separated by the arrival of the Mongols, and those who persist in modern day geographic Turkey expand after the arrival and throw off the Mongol yoke and have this empire that persists in the Middle East up until the modern time. So let's watch this history again with one map to make it even clearer.
Okay, if you didn't understand it, watch it. It's going to give you a quick story of it all on one map. Watch what's going to happen here. It's going to give you the whole story.
Because the Turkish peoples, in my view, are the best explanation at present for this group J, not Arab Muslims. So
did you just hear what he just said? He said this group J is not connected with Arab Muslims. Why is this important? Why is it important to know that? Because the Y chromosome is from the male. Now, understand this when I tell you this, as there's some people who think, oh, why do you go by the male's line? Why not the female's line? Israel was founded on fathers of Israel. It's important to understand the Lord protected the father's line constantly. When Israel would go through and conquer places, they would slay all the males of other nations and they would take in the females. It's important to understand that X chromosome, there's actually an X chromosome from the mother and from the father. You're not going to be able to trace it all the way back to history when you got such a mix like that. But you can find the perfect way by looking at the Y chromosome. Now, understand, we can do this both ways. We can actually find out the lineage through the mother's line. We can do that, but it's much more harder. It's important to understand through the Y chromosome, that's when you get the clarity for these things, for the sake of understanding. That's where you're going to get the clarity for these things. If someone has a question on why the Y chromosome, I can show you biblical evidence and I can show you scientific evidence on the reason why we go by the Y chromosome. That's why this geneticist, if you see this video, he'll earlier tell us because of the Y chromosome, because we study the Y chromosome, that's how we get a more accurate and pinpoint understanding on who peoples are. Very interesting to see this stuff. They have a interesting playlist that talks about these things. If you've never seen Answers in Genesis, definitely, I just want to show you, not advertising them, but they're definitely a channel I would definitely sub to. I would definitely recommend you subbing to such a channel like this. But let me see. I'm going to show you a playlist that's very, very interesting that you can understand. And they basically give you, what's the word I'm looking for? They give you scientific evidence for all types of things. Let me see, where is it? Early, right here. You see this where it says new history of the human race? He's giving you actual information connecting people to the lines of Ham, Shem, and Japheth. Definitely interesting playlist to see there. But let's continue. Remember, they're doing an unbiased study. Can we identify the Jewish genetics, right? Now, watch what happens here. I want you to see this whole thing because this is going to be really interesting. Watch what happens.
I think Turkey as Turkish peoples as here. Yet history, their origin is not there. It's in Central Asia in the 600s. Turkish people arise in Central Asia in the 600s. Some of these people begin migrating to Europe in the 700s, which is why I think we see some of the echo in the splits between Europeans and Indian peoples at that point in time. There's another split that happens, the Seljuk Turks, which give rise then to the modern Turkish peoples around the thousands. But there's still Turkish peoples left over. The split happens in the thousands, and those who are still left over move down then and are invading, part of the armies that invade India in the 1200s. I mentioned the last episode talking about the Vikings, that there's this general rule of thumb that seems to emerge in the human family tree, that last empire standing wins. Yes, you might invade and take over, but if there's some people group that comes in after you and then wipes you out, they're the group that's going to be dominant today. So yes, they arrive in Europe in the 700s, but there's many other peoples who arrive after them. So they're a minority of European peoples today. The peoples in India, we saw that the Delhi Sultanate is followed by the Mughal Empire, the Mongols. And so they're not the last empire standing, they're a minority of India today. Even the Seljuk Turks, as they pass through the Middle East, are not the last empire standing. The Mongols march through here, and after the Mongols, other Iranian peoples who then rise. And so they're not the major grouping in this part of the world today, not even in the Middle East, because the Turkish people here are followed by the Mongol conquest. So the Turks are pushed into modern day geographic Turkey as a result of the Mongol conquest, but then they begin reconquering again and become the last empire standing in other parts of the world. They move into Europe, but eventually pushed back out. They move into parts of North Africa, and perhaps more importantly for our study, they're in the Middle East for several centuries, right up until the modern era, when the modern Muslim countries, Iraq, Saudi Arabia, emerge today.
Did you understand that real fast? The thing that you must understand, the original Ishmaelites were replaced by Turks. The original Ishmaelites were replaced by Turks, so a lot of people are not comparing apples and oranges. They're comparing apples and apples, right? They're not comparing. They're not taking the same people coming from the original people, but they're taking Turks and comparing them to Turks. That's actually what's going on. And what I want you to pay attention to is the next thing that's following. Watch what happens here. Watch what happens right here so you can understand this. When it starts talking about the Turks. So remember, the Turks, these are who's going to be in the area that a lot of people, they think about certain areas around these areas. And watch what he says here. Remember, this study is can we identify the Jews genetically. Watch what happens here. Watch what happens here, and it's going to be very, very important to know.
This history of the Turks seems to find a very strong echo in the geographic extent of Group J today. So who are the Jews? Who are modern day Jewish people? Well, it seems that a section, I should say, a subsection of modern Jews, along with many other Middle Eastern peoples, and some Europeans, like Greeks and other Balkan Peninsula folks, and Italians, and even some Spaniards at a low percentage, and even some Indians, all share a common Turkish heritage. They trace.
I apologize for the closed captions. I don't think they work on when I'm live, but I do try to turn on closed captions when I'm playing a video. Beloved family. But after the live, it automatically puts on closed captions. So it'll be closed captions at the live. I try not to use that StreamYard because I know that closed captions don't show on StreamYard, but this one on a restream afterwards, it'll show those closed captions on here. I wish it could show at the same time, but I don't know if it has the possibility of even doing something like that, to be honest with you. But if I ever find out a way to have it play at the same time, I would definitely have those closed captions with you, family. But listen to what it just said here. Remember what I was saying those other days? Family, understand what I'm saying when I say this. I tell you the truth. If the evidence pointed that they are 100% Judeans, I would have no problem with it. I would say they're Judeans. Let us bow down to the truth and allow truth to allow itself to spread. I tell you right now, Understand this. I have an Ashkenazi associate. I know he has two sons, two daughters. For the sake of understanding, he's a married man. He's a very good man. For the sake of understanding, well, good as in he's kind. For the sake of understanding, I'm still working on converting him from Judaism to Christianity. So that's a work in progress. So understand, this is not a racist intent. Understand this. Rather, this is a truthful intent. Look at the information that he's going to tell you here. Did he not just say that the Ashkenazi are Turks? Wasn't I saying this for a long time? Wasn't I saying that the evidence, the historical evidence, the genetic evidence, the linguistic evidence, the geographic evidence, all the evidences point that the Ashkenazi are not the original people, but they are actually a converted people from the Turks. Watch what he says here. He's going to say it clear as day right here. He's going to talk about all the groups that are going to be of Turks. Watch what he says here. I'm going to play it. And if you have any questions, ask.
Who are modern day Jewish people? Well, it seems that the geographic extent of group J today. So who are the Jews? Who are modern day Jewish people? Well, it seems that a section, I should say, a subsection of modern Jews, along with many other Middle Eastern peoples, and some Europeans, like Greeks and other Balkan Peninsula folks, and Italians, and even some Spaniards at a low percentage, and even some Indians, all share a common Turkish heritage. They trace some of their origins to Central Asia. Not all of these people, but if you're in the Middle East, a heavy percentage of you do trace your origins via Group J to the Turkish people. And what we've seen in this episode is, once again, Central Asia seems to play this dominant role in the world history of peoples. We've seen other Central Asian lineages, R1A, R1B, due to Mongols, Magyars. Well, here the Turkish people are showing up in the Middle East. They have a dominant presence. They're about a quarter of the peoples in India. The fingers of Central Asia, even though they don't necessarily occupy much attention in the history of Western civilization, politically they don't play a huge role in Europe, but in terms of their DNA, massive echo in Europe, in the Middle East, significant imprint in India, and even now in North Africa. But could there still be an ancient Jewish lineage?
Did you just hear what he just said? Listen to me when I say this, family. I'm telling you the truth. The time will come where many people will say, oh, we were just about controversy. But I'm telling you the truth. This geneticist, let me show you who he is. Let me show you who the person that we're looking at who's speaking here. All right, here he is right here. Dr. Nathaniel T. Jensen, right here. You can get a little history about his background and everything. Let's see if we got a little background thing to him. Sometimes you can find some things on him. Okay, so he has a PhD from Harvard Medical School in cell and development. This is great. This is absolutely great because he works on genetics itself. He understands these things. He understands these things completely. And what I was talking about before, I'm letting you know that he is in agreement with these things. Not that we know each other. I don't know him. I don't know this person, but I do know that the genetic information, the historic information, all the other information points that the Ashkenazi are Khazars. They're Khazars, they're Turks. They're the same ones that converted to Judaism a long time ago. The genetics prove it. Very important to understand with this thing. Now, that's what you're seeing here. You're seeing someone, I'm pretty sure that maybe this will go into who he is a little more. All right, so you can see right here, just talking about him and everything. So you can see here in development of biology and from Harvard University, right? You can see he serves as a research. You can see all these things. For the sake of understanding, I'm gonna see if I can find a little more on his schooling. This one just says PhD, Cell and Development Biology, Harvard Graduate School of Arts and Science. Honors and rewards. You can see a couple different honors and rewards. That's great. You can see he has some potential. He's a respectable character to go over these things for the sake of understanding. Looking at some of the things, just seeing if we find something else on this. All right. There's a few little things on them and everything. So you can see this is who we're talking about. Bios. Bios. Oh, this is the bios. Is it a bios? Oh, it's just showing multiple different people. Okay. So this is who I'm showing you. This is great because what you just heard there single-handedly is what I've been saying for so long, beloved family. I'm showing you this because I don't want you to think that we lean on our own understanding, but we lean on the truth of all things. It's important to understand that we lean on the truth of all things. And this is something, listen to what he just said. He said, but could there still be an ancient Jewish lineage? He's saying that they don't have the ancient Jewish lineage. Understand what I'm saying this. And why is this important? Because what's about to happen when 144,000 are sealed, you're going to be shocked on who they are. You're going to be shocked. You're going to be completely stunned. If you don't know who they are, you're going to be completely shocked. But I want you to see this to the end, just so you see that there's no semantics here. He's really honestly telling you that they are indeed Turks. That's what he's telling you here. And that's what all these evidences that I found all point to the same thing. They all point to the same thing: the historical evidence, the genetic evidence, as well as linguistic, biblical, and geographical, and all types of different evidences that point to these things. So you can, and this is very important. Why is this important? Because this means the people in Israel today are not really the original Israelites. Understand this. Yet their cells are actually trying to kick out the real Israelites. If you don't know, you can look it up yourself. The Hebrew Israelites that are being deported from Israel. You should probably look into those things. And I'm gonna show you something at the end of this, and I'm gonna show you something that the information of who the real Israelites were, even the 10 tribes. I'm gonna show you who the 10 tribes were, and I'm gonna show you where they are. The leader who sent them away, the last leader of Assyria. Let me go up a little bit. Few people know this, but remember, who took the northern tribes? Assyria. Do you know who was the leader who took the northern tribes? I forget how you say his name. Sennacherib, something like that. Let me show you something. If I can find it, I'm gonna zoom out on this note a little bit so that it can be easier to scroll. Zoom back in. That was a little too much zoomed out. I'm gonna be at least able to read the letters. Okay, let me just find where this individual is so I can show you this. In fact, I'm not gonna show you now. It should be somewhere right here, but I'm gonna go over it another time otherwise and see if I can. Let's see. All right. Okay, I'm gonna leave this here. I'm just gonna leave that right there. I might talk about that in a little bit. But first, before we get off track, the reason why I want to show you this because understand when I say this, this is extremely important to understand that this is what we've been going on for the last week. I'm gonna be off of this, but I want people to understand that when we go into these things, we make sure we look thoroughly, carefully, intensely to make sure this evidence is true. And this evidence is true because you're hearing it from a geneticist. So let's continue on hearing what he's going to say here, and you're going to get a good understanding of this.
In terms of their DNA, massive echo in Europe, in the Middle East, significant imprint in India, and even now in North Africa. But could there still be an ancient Jewish lineage that we haven't yet discussed or haven't yet discovered?
Did you hear what he just said? He just said that their lineage is not the ancient Israelite lineage. Do you hear what he just said? I really want you to understand this because I feel this is one of the most important things that you can take in as of the truth. They are not. Understand, even this symbol right here, this actually comes from the Turks. Few people actually even know this. This is actually a sign from the Turks. When we will talk about that one day. But I want you to understand this. He said that they do not have the ancient Israelite lineage. That's what he's saying there. He's saying their lineage does not point to them being originally Israelites. He says even their time frame of existence doesn't even show that they're Israelites. It's important to understand that. But he's saying that they haven't discovered it yet. He's saying that the genetics, the actual pure genetics, he don't think that they discovered it yet. But I'm going to show you that they know it. But watch what happens here. I'm going to show you a little more onto this.
Could we find the Mosaic lineage, going back to Moses and Aaron, David, Solomon? Hope you join us in future episodes to find out this is the new history of the human race, new windows into our past that we haven't been able to see before.
Well, I'll tell you what. I think the COVID-19 situation has greatly benefited historical research and genetics, because you've been stuck at home devouring history books, locked away. We'll have to do that with you more often, Nathaniel.
It's been very.
So did you see how he basically ends this? Is a great video. I got this in the description. If you want to see it from the beginning, you should see it. You should see it. He goes over a lot of it. He talks about the Y chromosome. They know that the Y chromosome of the so-called Kohanim, the so-called line of Aaron, has this Y chromosome mainly in it. They did a study on the Y chromosome, and they know that this is a line of the Turks. This is a Turkish line. This is not a Israeli line. And why is this important? Because if you compare it with other family lines, like for example, see the yellow, see the blue, see the colors here. I'm going to show you where I'm going to match these colors up, and I'm going to show you what they're connected with. So Ashkenaz, the Kohanim, so-called Kohanim, and then you got the in reddish, yellow, pinkish, the Ashkenaz. Then you got Ashkenaz, and then you got Germany. I'm going to show you something. And you got another of Germany. Let me show you something. They're the same people. They're 100% the same people. Look what happens here. You can see Germany. Look how much percentage it is in Germany. So this is how much percentage. I had to kind of clip these two together right here. This is that R1A, 1A. Very important to understand. That's what's also found in the Turkish and all different lines. You can see right here, they're Germans. They're basically the same people as Germans. They're not any different. That's important because the Y chromosome is going to give you that answer. That's why that's important to see. You see what's going on there? Get an idea of those things. Now let's go back down. I'm gonna go down. I'm gonna show you now. I'm gonna show you something. I'm gonna show you that they actually knew. I'm gonna show you in their own books. In their own books, they knew that the Israelis were actually in Africa. A lot of people, they're gonna be like, "Oh, this is not no important information." But wait, just wait a little bit. Wait a little bit, and this will be the most important information you ever seen when 144,000 are revealed. But what? Let me show you something. I'm going to show you something now that's very important. So the reason why I wanted to show you this is because this information that you just seen today, this very information that you just seen today, is very important to understand that this haplogroup is actually of the Turks. This haplogroup is actually of the Turkish line. Let's go back up. Okay. And that's why I wanted you to show you that, because they say that this is of the Kohanim. Now, let me show you who the real people are. I'm going to show you something. I'm going to show you actual reports, historical reports, two videos. I'm going to show you historical reports on. I'm not even going to talk about the Judeans. I'm going to show you that the 10 tribes went into Africa. I'm going to show you that. I'm going to show you that the kings of Assyria actually exiled the 10 tribes into Africa. So let's see that. I'm just going to show you just a few things.
Shalom, Israel. What I want to do in this presentation is I want to show unto you proof according to rabbinic sources that black people or the descendants of black people, those who carry the Y haplogroup E1B1A, that we are in fact the real Jews. Now I will prove it according to the rabbinic sources, meaning the so-called Jewish own resources. Let me start. Now, when you go to the Talmud, here is the William Davidson edition of the Talmud. And in the book of Sanhedrin, 94a, so the book of Sanhedrin, chapter 94a and verse 15, it says here in the Talmud, it says, the Gemara asks, to where did Sennacherib exile the 10 tribes?
So, for the sake of understanding, the Talmud is an abomination. Yet, written in their Talmud, and understand this person also knows that too. His first video talks about it as well. But he's using their sources to show you that they themselves know even where the 10 tribes are. Now, look who he's talking about. I know you say that Sennacherib right here, Sennacherib right there. Very important. We'll talk about that person. I'm gonna show you his son. Let me see. Right. Let me see. Go down real fast. Actually, this is not the one I want to. Actually, this one's all right, but this is not the one I want to show you. I want to show you a different one if I can't find it. Otherwise, I'll talk about it another time because it's going to be talking about Assyria and a couple things with Assyria and whatnot. Let me see if I can find it. I want to show you something. The reason why I want to show you this is because this person who he's talking about is the one of the Assyrian empire. I'll look in this one, and maybe we'll talk about this tomorrow. So I'm not going off track with this because I have to look through it. But this is actually going to be talking about that leader of Assyria, right? The king of Assyria that pretty much sent the people out and whatnot and all those things. Let me go back because that one who's they're talking about here, they're going to be talking about that individual that grabbed the 10 tribes, and watch what it says here in this Talmud. And I'm going to show you another source that also says the same thing. And I'm going to show you that they actually recognize this source and they try to discredit it. Watch what happens here.
Mar Zutra says he exiled them to Africae. He exiled them to Africae, which means Africa. So which
The reason why I'm showing you this is because a lot of people, when you think of the Assyrian Empire, they were here. So a lot of people, when they think that they exiled the Jews, a lot of them think they exiled them all throughout the places, but rather they sent them down. When they took them, they exiled them down into Africa, into this area. And that's what this is showing. And I'm gonna show you another historical evidence that shows you that the 10 tribes were sent into Africa. That's where the 10 tribes were sent.
in the sources of the so-called Jews themselves, in the Talmud, it is written that the 10 tribes exiled to Africa. This is very important. Very important. This is a written proof that, first of all, the 10 tribes are not in America, but they are in Africa. Now, some of them could have gone with the ships into slavery, but I'm saying that the 10 tribes went to exile into Africa. And we know that right now when we go to Africa and we see the Igbo, we see the Lemba, we see different groups in Ghana and all across Africa, we see that those who carry the E1B1A haplogroup keep the commandments and the laws and statutes of the Most High. So we know that they are Hebrew Israelites. In this presentation, I want to show to you, this is part 2 of rabbinic resources that show and prove that we, black people and descendants of black people according to the paternal line, meaning the E1B1A, that we are in fact the real Jews and the real Israelites. I will show to you in this presentation that a letter was written to the true Israelites by an Ashkenazi Jew that begs the question, Ashkenazi Jew or the black Jew, who are the real ordained? As I will show to you in this presentation, according to the Ashkenazis themselves, we are the true ordained, and they are fake. Let me prove it. Here on the screen you see a book that is written by an Ashkenazi Jew, and it says Vilna Gaon's student's letter to the lost tribes of Israel, composed in Safed in 1830 Common Era. It says a letter from the Ashkenazi communities of Safed and Jerusalem to the lost tribes that they had hoped would be found by an emissary sent to Yemen in 1830. So this is a letter sent from the Ashkenazi communities. Remember that, a letter sent from the Ashkenazi communities to the lost tribes of Israel, the 10 tribes. Now let's see what they have to say about the 10 tribes. They send a letter, and it says here, I start from the beginning, thus send the dwellers of the land of Israel, who abide by the Torah of Moses, which is a gift and inherited portion. By this they refer to themselves. So the Ashkenazi community, which they say that they abide by the Torah of Moses, they are sending what they say a letter to their brothers, to our brothers, the children of Israel, meaning the 10 tribes, the son of Isaac, the son of Abraham, who revealed the belief in Hashem. They are our holy and pure brothers, the righteous upon whom the world rests, the Bnei Moshe, servant of Hashem. Now listen to this, who dwell across the river Shevation, also known as Sambatyon, and who pledge allegiance to the king of Israel, who sits upon a mighty throne and who rules over the 10 tribes. Now listen to this, whose settlement is in the land of beyond the rivers of Nubia, Cush. So this Ashkenazi community was sending a letter to the lost tribes of Israel, knowing that their settlement is where? In the land of beyond the rivers of Nubia, Cush. We know that Cush is Ethiopia. If you go beyond Ethiopia, where do you come? You come in the area of the Bantu people, who are descendants of E1B1A, the Bantu Hebrew Israelites. Because beyond Cush is what? You have Kenya, you have Tanzania, and all the way onto West Africa, you have peoples that are descendants of the real Israelites. I read on, who camp according to their banners, the tribe of Dan, of Naphtali, of Gad, and Asher, the tribe of Issachar. All of the 10 tribes are represented within the landmass which is called Africa.
Do you understand what this thing is saying? This is a paper sent by the Jewish people, and they're actually identifying the 10 tribes being southern into Africa. That's what they're saying here. They're saying that the 10 tribes are actually in Africa. That's what they're saying here. That's what we actually see there. And they're actually saying it that they're further even beyond Ethiopia. And that's actually in the scriptures. It says beyond the rivers of Ethiopia, actually beyond it. And then there's other scriptures that actually let us know on this side of it, on the right here, the west side of it, or more towards the west side area, where Cameroon and Niagara, all these areas. This is important to understand because this is actually where we find the Israelites. Very important to understand. That's what he's saying here. This paper is saying that the 12 tribes are down here, not up here. They actually let us know that the 12 tribes were exiled. He's saying when Assyria took them, they exiled, they banished them down. We'll do a study directly on the exile. Very interesting. Even if you see what they look like. You ever see what the Assyrian exile looked like? Let me just show you something. It's not hard to look up. Let me show you. Have you seen what the Israelites look like? I don't know if you ever seen this, but you should see what the Israelites look like. You can see an idea what the Israelites look like. You can zoom in a little bit on them. I don't know if this thing zooms right there. You get an idea. Look at those braids. You can see the dreads and everything. You can see what they look like. You should see what the people say when they say these are Israelites. When they say these here are actually going to be Israelites and everything. When they talk about how they look. Actually, I think that I have I think I can find a very interesting video that quickly talks about like how they look in the exile, or maybe I'll grab that. Maybe I'll grab that later on. I don't know if I put a like on it. Let me see if I did. I want to see if I can grab that video. Let me go to the channel and see if I have maybe a like on that. Let's see. Playlist lights. Let me show you. Let me see if I can find it. Because I think this information, I think it's important to have this information. I think it's important to constantly review this information. I think it's important for us to see this information and go over this information. What happened? How do I open up that thing? Let me see if I can open it up. No, I don't want to play something at the same time. Let me see if I can. How do I open it? I wish I could click it without opening it. Let me just pause it and let me just open the list of it. I want to see if I can open the list and show you something here. Let's see. Let me see. I might have to look for it a little bit. I have to look for it. It's a real interesting one, but I'll grab it another time. But it's made by Benayah Israel, and his brother. Basically, there's a part that's very interesting. I'll make a note, and we'll do a whole dedicated live on the Assyrian exile. I think these historical events are really interesting, but you'll be very interested in seeing how they describe these individuals. They don't describe them as looking European. They describe them as looking African. They basically describe the Israelites looking African for the sake of understanding. You can kind of get a look right here. And they send them to Africa. They send these ones into Africa. So you can see their basically their rows of hair right there. And these are the ones that's going to be sent into Africa. And it's going to be really interesting when you get to see all that the way that's supposed to be. Let me close these things because we don't need all these things open. But I'll show you a quick thing on that later on. But that's what this is talking about. This is talking about that the 12 tribes are actually in Africa. That's what it's letting you know right here. Let's keep going.
Not anywhere else. So this is an amazing resource by which we can prove who the real Israelites are. But let me continue because there's something that's even more important. They say here, second, what our hearts desire, this thing. It is well known from our rabbis, Rambam first chapter Sanhedrin, that before the Messiah comes, there must be in the land of Israel a court comprised of those ordained in classical semicha, ordination, yet through our sins and through the harsh decrees of the multiple exiles, the ordination has disappeared. So the Ashkenazis say they have no ordination. And the law is that only an ordained can ordain.
Yes, I can go to Chicago. Let me zoom out. Just randomly go to Chicago right here. And then Chicago should be somewhere right here. So here's Chicago. I think this is the Navy Pier, somewhere over here. Maybe this is the Navy Pier. I'm not sure. Oh, right here, Navy Pier. And then you got downtown. You got Liz over here. So that's Chicago right there. Just zooming out. Sometimes I like how what it looks like when you're zooming in and zooming out. I can't believe how much information or detail we can find ourselves. Amen, family. Amen. Let's see that this little.
In this, who are descendants of E1B1A? Law is that only an ordained can ordain. And Hashem promised that there will be a high court, a Bet Din, of the multiple exiles. The ordination has disappeared. So the Ashkenazis say they have no ordination. And the law is that only an ordained can ordain. And Hashem promised that there will be a high court, a Bet Din, as it says, I will restore your judges as it was in the past. Afterwards you'll be known as the city of justice, a center of truth. Zion shall be redeemed through justice, and its returnees through charity. And this will happen without a doubt once the Creator helps people become attracted to the Torah before the coming of Moshiach. And as we have heard, listen to this, and as we have heard that you, talking about those that are in the land of Africa, that you have a Sanhedrin ordained from ordained, as you adjudicate capital cases. Please select some of your ordained wise men to come to Israel
All right, my bad. I didn't plug in this computer. Now it's plugged in. Let's see this little end part, and then we'll talk.
ordained scholars so that we'll have in Israel a court comprised of ordained, because the beginning of the redemption hangs on this. I hope you caught this, because this is proof, according to Jewish resources, rabbinical resources,
Now, I don't know if you caught this,
that
but
they do not.
let me pause it. I don't know if you caught this, but let me explain it real fast. So obviously, a lot of the people of the Torah today who don't believe in Messiah, they think that they're still waiting for the Mashiach. Where it says right there, it says Torah, it says help people come to the Torah before the coming of the Mashiach. That's talking about the Messiah. You know, the Mashiach is the Messiah because let's just go to if you ever have to deal with someone who says the Messiah didn't come yet, give them Daniel 9:25. Give them Daniel 9:25 and let them know that they're a liar. Because if Daniel 9:25 has any truth in it, which it does, it's all truth. Let it be known that before the second temple was to fall, put it right here. Before the second temple was to fall, the Messiah was to come, the Mashiach. And this is how we know. They can't deny this. It's one of those things that can't be denied once it's understood directly what's being said here. Watch what it says here. And it can't be understood because the word for word understanding is very clear. Watch what it says here. It says, therefore know and understand that from the going forth of the commandment to restore and build Jerusalem until the Messiah, the Mashiach, right here. You can see that, Mashiach. That's why you see some people say HaMashiach, the Messiah, for the sake of understanding the anointed one. Go back. He let us know it's going to be a certain time frame and then it's going to be built. If someone ever tries to say that the Messiah hasn't come yet the second temple failed, they're a liar. They actually don't know prophecy at all. And Paul talks, and Peter talks about this with Paul. He says some people wrestle scriptures as they do with all other scriptures. So this right here, just to get a clear reading, I'll just read it in English, is what it says. And now you always got to take 9:24 to know what it's talking about when it says, remember 9:24, where it says basically 70 weeks are determined on your people and your holy city to finish the transgression and make an end of sin and make reconciliation for iniquity and bring in everlasting righteousness and seal up the vision and the prophecy and to anoint the most holy. I don't know how I know that all by thought. It says, know therefore and understand that from the going forth of the commandment to restore and build Jerusalem until Messiah the Prince, there shall be 7 weeks and 62 weeks, and the street shall be built again, and the wall even in troublous times. So if someone doesn't understand that, then you know what they don't understand? Common biblical understanding, the common biblical narrative. Because this tells us that this is talking about Mashiach, a leader, the ruler, the prince. That's what it's talking about here. That means the actual Mashiach. So these ones are denying the Messiah, thinking that he's going to come. That's what's very important to know, that who is talking about here. These are the same ones who believe in the Talmud, who don't believe in that Messiah will come. They're letting you know that further in the ends of Africa are the 10 tribes scattered in all these areas. So the 10 tribes are actually in Africa. That's what they're saying here, the 10 tribes. So that means that the 10 tribes are in Africa. If they look African, then we should actually see the Judeans look kind of with some African descent, especially Benjamin, especially if someone says they're Benjamin or Levi, because we know they were darker skinned. Because remember what it said about Moses? He said he looks like he's an Egyptian. He looks Egyptian. He looks like he's Egyptian. That's important to understand. Moses looked Egyptian. He wasn't an Egyptian, yet he looked Egyptian. Now, that's what this was all about. Just a little summary.
Any ordination of the Most High. But the ordination lies where? With the black Jews.
All right, so let me close this, and let me close a few of these. Keep that one open. I'm gonna do a live on that. We'll talk about the exile and everything, and why that's important, because it's really interesting to get an idea on why we have the information that we have that a lot of people aren't really bringing out. They're not really looking to those things, the information. But let me show you another thing. Just gotta see where it is. Oh, okay. So remember how I told you I was gonna bring you clarity, because remember I showed you these things. We went over these things very thoroughly. If anyone has any questions on any of those videos, if they don't agree, if they think that there's something that's wrong, I would love to have a open, holy conversation on those things. Not a debate or fighting or anger and all that stuff, but actually a logical conversation on these finds, and I can show you that these finds are 100% sure. I can show you that these finds are 100% sure for the sake of understanding. But let me show you something. Let me go down. I want to show you something now. I want to show you something on, where is it? Down here. All right. All right. I want to show you something really interesting on this one. It's at 428, I mean 420, 28, but this person, this is really interesting what he finds. This person, I was shocked on what he found here, but this is a very interesting find to see. So I'm gonna mute here and let you see.
I got so much to say, Lord. Let me keep going. I ain't gonna get done if I don't keep going. So we're gonna lay hands on Edom and Moab, and the children of Ammon shall obey them. Now, DNA proof. Because I gotta give you another witness, so you know I ain't just coming off the blue. I told you I wouldn't even receive this stuff until I got definitive proof. I said definitive proof. Now I told y'all DNA is, you can't beat it. If you ever go to court, you want DNA proof. You hear what I'm saying? DNA gets you, set you free. Now, let me give you a little bit of understanding of, well, y'all know what DNA is. I mean, you kind of understand. I ain't gonna go deep into the concepts of DNA, but you know what it is. It means your genetic code. It means they can tell if you've been there or not. All this. This is what I want to show y'all, because this is where
Now, before I play this, for any blood brothers and sisters, as I do pay attention to you guys, I hope that if you have any comments, let me know. Because understand, as we grow in this information, one day you will look back at this like, wow, we knew this stuff before the world knew this stuff. Because look at this. I'm telling you, this. I didn't see this. If I seen this, that would have been it. I would have just showed you this video and that would have been it. But this video I just seen, I was like, well, there it is. That's the genetic study broken down as I found it to be so. And the person also found it to be so, which has better training in these fields than I do. Yet it's not so hard where I can't understand it. It's not so hard where I can't understand it. It's not one of those things where you have to go to school to understand these codes. You can understand the codes yourself. You can find the information to those things. But let me go to something here. I want to show you something. Before I show you this, just to give information on why the Y chromosome. Why is it that we got to look at the Y chromosome to get a better understanding on these things? Why the Y chromosome and not the mother's line? Because I had somebody that was talking about why the Y chromosome, why are we looking at the Y chromosome when the Y chromosome has a smaller percentage. But that smaller percentage makes it more accurate. Think of it like anything. Let's say like if I had like for example the vaccines, right? Think about the vaccines. What's the thing about the vaccines? With the vaccine, right? With the vaccine, one of the things about the vaccine is that there's percentages, right? Some you would say, let's just take random examples. Let's say one is 80%, one is 90%. So that 20% and that 10% is that area. So the smaller percentage is better for the sake of understanding. It's the same thing with the chromosomes. Let me show you something. Let me go up to something and show you here, just to show you a little bit. Somebody give a little understanding on that real fast. Besides the biblical narrative, important to understand the biblical narrative always goes by the father's line. That's something that doesn't change. But let me show you something, a nice little summary. I think it's a great summary on this right here. Right here. I think this person breaks down a great summary of it.
See, there is not a huge relevance to your haplogroup. It's only curiosity so you can understand your place in the story of human migration. See, there is not a huge relevance to your haplogroup. It's only curiosity so you can understand your place in the story of human migrations. However, that's just the scientific perspective. There is always the traditional perspective as well. But isn't it interesting that the way that the Y DNA haplogroup passes down from father to son corresponds precisely with the traditional notion of patrilineality? That is the kinship system in which the family membership, notions of kinship and family membership are derived from father to son and passed on in this way. And that women, when they marry into a new family, join a new family. That is not only the case with the ancient Hebrews in the Bible, but also with the Proto-Indo-Europeans and with all Indo-European groups
and all Semitic groups, and in many other kinds of cultures. In fact, patrilineality is the common rule among humanity, with some exceptions in more matriarchal systems, but these are rare. Patrilineality associates the passing on of a name in patronymics, sometimes, or the passing on of wealth, property, land, even slaves, wives, all kinds of things are passed down. In a spiritual sense, the family name was always seen as, or rather the family line was always seen in Indo-European cultures, such as Roman, as going through the father's line. And now science has shown us that we can trace this in a way exactly as the old oral cultures did, through that male line. They would have done in Icelandic sagas, they say this man's son of this man's son, just as the Hebrews in the Bible say, Isaac begat Abraham, or whatever, this kind of thing. Well, these different cultures all showed a very great concern with being able to prove your line through the father back a long way. They didn't really concern themselves with all the different women they married along the way, and nor does the Y haplogroup. It doesn't show you that. If these ancient cultures thought that the most important aspect of descent was the male line, and if you feel the same way they did, then in that case, your Y haplogroup is very important, because that's precisely what it shows. There's a
She did a DNA test, which she would have my DNA. You got what I'm saying? Dan through Ethiopia is a combination of closely linked DNA sequences on B1B1A. That's what that would be. That's what. If you are now, why? I'm telling you, it's gonna change who you how you see yourself.
All right, so let me go to this timestamp here, and I want to show you this because I think that this is very important to understand. So the Y chromosome, as in the biblical narrative, must be through the father's line, as we must trace these things through the father's line to get a clear and clean-cut understanding of these things. It must be through the father's line. It's very important to understand that. It's not just through the father's line, as in some people don't understand Numbers 1. Understand it's not just because of war. It's because that's how the lineages are made. It's very important to understand. And that's also how we can find out who is who. Now, I'm going to go to 428. All right.
So you go get your own DNA test, but it's all the same because they found out that the African American haplogroup is the same, not like Africans. I'm gonna show you. I'm gonna give it to you so you look it up for yourself. Now let me show you. Genetic group. Our haplogroup is E1B1A. That's what that would be. That's what your African American haplogroup would be, right? You got that? This haplogroup is found predominantly among the Bantu Negro, descended to include but not limited to the African Limba, West African tribes, Igbo, remember that's very important, Igbo Jews in Africa, African Americans, West Indians, Brazilians, Haitians, and other Negro-influenced races throughout the Caribbean and scattered across different nations. Contrary to false gender reporting, this is not sub-Saharan or Hamitic haplogroup. It is Semitic. That's everything. I just told you everything. That means it's not Hamitic, so that Ham is where you get the Africans from. Kush, Ethiopia, Mizraim, Egypt. It's saying we're not from them. We're not from sub-Saharan Africa. We're Semitic. This is telling you that's saying you're not of Ham, you're of Shem. This is if you are now why is what I'm telling y'all, why is this grouping important? Because there are people that's bloodline of Ham by thy enemies make atonement, and they that hate thee have lifted up thy head. They have taken.
So the reason why I wanted to show you that is because we have to have a very honest study. There seems that there's a bias going on around the world. Maybe there's more racist intents than this world knows that they have. That they really don't want the Judeans to be dark skinned. They really don't want it. They don't want the Judeans to be dark skinned, because you know what that does? That brings a point of responsibility that indeed, as Messiah said, they shall fall by the edge of the sword and go captive into all nations, as we see that these people have indeed went into captivity into all nations. Now, I told you this before. The way that you find out who the Judeans are, you got to find a Y chromosome group that is not found amongst any other group. That's how pure. If you look at the Y chromosome group, if they are indeed the Judeans, the real Judeans, we should find a Y chromosome that's not amongst anyone else, and there is one. There's important to understand. I'm not going to go into it now, but there is that A00 that is found in a large group. As it says right here, the A00 lineage is discovered in a large database of consumer samples of African Americans, or who they call the Negroes, and has not been identified in traditional hunter-gatherer populations of sub-Saharan Africa. Just like that video I just showed you, the people who they call African Americans, though they found them in Africa, you can actually find out the historical reasons why they ended up in Africa, and you'll find out that they are not even genetically connected with Hamites. They're not even genetic, though they are darker skin. See, that's the thing. When people see skin tone, they think everyone's the same, whoever's that skin tone. They'll say, oh, that person's a dark skin, so they must be a Hamite, or they must be African. That would mean the same thing. If someone has lighter skin tone, they must be European. But the thing that we have to understand that there's different skin tones for skin tone, and different genetics for different things. So there's different skin tones, different genetics, different peoples. They're not all the same peoples, even if they live by each other. There's migrations that happened over areas, exiles, deportations that happens. Very important to understand the slaveries that happen, right? There's going to be different people moving to different areas. And this A lineage, you can look it up yourself. This is one study from Cell. This is from Cell right here. Or this one is from PubMD. This is going to be PubMD, and this also is from Cell. It talks about the same thing. Both of these talk about the same thing. And just to show that they do, they talk about the same exact thing, that who they call the African Americans are not African. They know this 100% without a doubt. They know this 100%. You can see it talks about the same thing. It talks about that Y chromosome. A00 lineage was found in a large database of consumer samples of African Americans, and has not been identified with traditional hunter-gatherer populations in sub-Saharan Africa. See what's going on there? Is letting us know that they're not the same people. The Hamites and the people who they call Negroes are not the same people. They're not the same people. As you can see here, talking about them. Now, it also said that they are Brazilian. And who are Brazilians? A Brazilian, the ones who were sent into Brazil, South America. Go to that real fast, right? South America, those are a mixed people. Those are actually Judeans mixed in with Europeans. Very important to understand. When they were taken into slavery, if you don't know the history of Brazil, very important history. These were actually those originally those Judean people sent here, and they mingled in. That's why Brazilian, they would say Brazilian is his own race, but Brazilian is just a mingled people. They're actually the Negroes. They're really the Negroes that actually mingled in with a lot of the males of the European, for the sake of understanding. If you've never seen that history, very interesting history to see what happened there when Spain took this area of South America. Now, let's understand this. It's very important to understand. If you don't understand this, let me just explain it real fast. Let's go. We'll need to look at that. Let me go back. So what we need to know is that, let me go to that note. Should put these in a little order here. All right, I'll close this one. We don't need that note. And I'll close this one. We don't need that one. And I'll keep that one. All right. So you can follow this. You can find this information on where they find this DNA. So you can see right here, this is where they found the DNA. And right here, West Africa. We also have maps of information on who's over there in Cameroon, because they actually let us know that they found these genetics in Cameroon. In Cameroon, they know that area was actually, as it says, according to, what do you say that, Sparsi or something, as I don't know, you said it, that S, the F, combination is confusing. Or I don't know how you say that. This person's name. I don't know how you pronounce this person's name, to be honest with you. I think Edwardsy or something like that. But according to this person's name, the land hereabout was peopled by Jews. You can, I don't know if you can see that. There's a real map, really interesting to see. So right there, you can see this land was peopled by Jews, right? This is Africa. This is Africa. This is actually what they call the slave coast. You can see another map right here, and this area, if you look and you see real closely, is actually the kingdom of. Let me actually click it here. These are ancient maps. Let me just zoom in on it a little bit. Okay, so right here, you can see, zoom, the kingdom of Judah or Yehuda. See what's going on right there? That's where they call the slave coast. That's the slave coast where the kingdom of Judah was. Now, let's go back. Let's go up a little bit. So important to understand. You can see we went over the Bible dictionaries. 2 Bible dictionaries let us know that the Hamites are not also called the Negro, right? We already looked at that when we see the information on that, right? The Hamites are not actually the same people, for the sake of understanding. This right here. I'll show you a different one. Very interesting thing here. I want to show you. This one's very interesting. I'll close that one. That one's interesting too, but this one, if you ever seen Young's Bible Dictionary, page 255, you can see where it talks about him, right? It'll let us know that he is the father of the dark races, but not the Negroid races. Right there it says, a son of Noah, right? Ham. This is the definition of Ham. Son of Noah, father of Cush, Egypt, Put, Canaan. And then it says, see further for. And then it says this, while they may have all been dark skinned, right? Because we know they're dark skinned because we have actual pictures of, let's go to that, of the Egyptians, right? We have the actual pictures of the Egyptians. We know what the Egyptians really look like. Let me just show you that again. Right here. It's a little note when I was breaking down. And this is what the Greeks made the Egyptians. I mean, this is the Egyptians. You can see what they look like. They're in the sea right there. And then this is, you can see that color and everything. This is supposed to be the Hebrews. So Moses and the Hebrews at the Red Sea crossing. This is 300 BC to 256 AD. So that's when they believe this painting was right here. You can see, get an idea of that. But that's not what I want to show you. Let me go down. So remember, Moses looked like an Egyptian, right? They said that Moses looked like an Egyptian. That was one of the things that was said. I want to show you something. Here's the Egyptians. They also know that they're African because of DNA. Right here, modern Egyptians share more with sub-Saharan Africa. Let me show you an actual tomb. Okay, so right here, this is Ramses II. You can see Ramses II, a darker skin. Ramses, well, not Ramses II. This is Ramses III. Ramses II wife right here, who's Ramses III mother, and you can see Ramses II here, right there, and you can see his tomb. Here's his tomb. This is a tomb. I forgot how you say that. Pashidu, something like that. It's dated to the early years of Ramses II, 1213 BC. You can see the Egyptians, what's going on there, right? Egyptians, classic idol worshippers, whatnot, right? And remember, Moses, it said that, and they said an Egyptian delivered us. Exodus 2:19, right? An Egyptian delivered us. Why did they say an Egyptian delivered us? Surely they know what the Egyptians look like. Surely they know that the Egyptians are darker skinned. But let's understand this. Though Ham is of the darker skinned races, right? It says, while they may have all been dark skinned, they were not the forefathers of the Negroid races, but rather of, as you see with Egypt and whatnot, and all these different races, right? That's one Bible, the Young's Bible Dictionary, page 255 to 256. You can see it yourself. It's a reference right there. You can also see this one. of the, what's that, Zadarian, I don't know if it's what that, Zerdavan's definition of him, right? Watch what it says here. Same thing, talking about it, right? It talks about Ham itself. Look right here. It says Ham, the youngest son of Noah, born probably such and such and such and such. A person, he says, watch what's this. Watch this. He became the the progenitor of the dark races, not the Negroids, not the Negroes, but the Egyptians, the Ethiopians, the Libyans, and what have you, Canaanites and whatnot. So you can see what's going on there. They're not the same. And that's what we actually find. We find a Y chromosome. We find much evidence that they're not the same types of people. They're not the same types of people. And it's important to understand that that's what we need to find. And a lot of people, when they see African Americans, they just say, oh, they're obviously African. And why do you think they say obviously African? Is it because their skin color? Because they don't look at the genetics and decipher it themselves? Or do they say, well, they came from Africa, they are called African Americans, so they must be African? That's not true. That's why it's important to understand when we look at these things very carefully. You'll be very surprised on what you find and the difference between these things. Notice what they say. They say they have an ancestor that no one else has. Ghost ancestor detected in DNA of today's West Africans. Remember what I said? Where's West Africa? What area do you think they're talking about when they say West Africa? West Africa, that's right here where you see Cameroon. When they found these genetics right here, this is what they're talking about, West Africa. This is the west of Africa. So this is the east of Africa. This is the west of Africa. This would be actually the northwest, the top area of Africa. I don't know why that just happened. Let's close that. Okay. We'll accept the cookies. We will take the cookies. All right. Let's go down. Let me show you something here. Very, very interesting when you see certain things like this. It talks about, if you notice, what is it talking about, right? What year is this? Usually they have the year somewhere on there. Let's see. I don't know if this has a year. Usually these little things have the year another time. Usually these little things have the year. I was just seeing if it had a date on it. Sometimes they do. This one doesn't. Or maybe I'm not looking in the right area for it. I don't know exactly where. I'll find out later. I'll scan through and examine it and see what's the dating on this thing. February, maybe this is it. I don't know. February 2020. Let's listen to it. Let's hear the article.
Ghost ancestor detected in DNA of today's West Africans. Yoruba and men have up to 19% genomic contribution from unidentified archaic human, who may have survived until recently. You might have a signal from it in your DNA too. An unknown hominin made a substantial contribution to the genome of modern West Africans, a new study has demonstrated. The genetic signal of this unknown ancestral species has been identified in 4 groups of West Africans, report Arun Durvasula and Sriram Sankaraman of the University of California, Los Angeles. In fact, you may have a trace of this unknown archaic human as well. Our study shows that some of this ancestry is also present in non-African populations. Sankaraman tells Haaretz, it's just less pronounced than in the West African groups. He and Durvasula are in the process of testing other populations around Africa for the signal, he shares. The interbreeding event in West Africa may have been quite recent in evolutionary terms, even though this new unknown species split off from the Homo line well over 500,000 years ago. Before the split between Neanderthals and Homo sapiens, they reported Wednesday in Science Advances. Specifically, by comparing the genomes of 405 West Africans with Neanderthal and Denisovan genomes and applying computer modeling, Durvasula and Sankaraman have discovered that contemporary Yoruba and men people derive between 2 to 19% of their genomes from this mysterious archaic hominid. In terms of averages, 6.6% of the Yoruba and 7% of men genome sequences are archaic, they calculate. Their revelation comes years after the discovery that non-Africans contain genetic signals from Neanderthals and Denisovan. But in this case, the authors demonstrate by statistical methods that these sequences cannot have originated in Neanderthals, Denisovan or African populations such as the Southern African Khoisan or Central African Pygmies. Asked if Neanderthals might have had it too, Sankaraman explains that we can't know at this stage. Our methods require substantial sample sizes to detect this ghost population, he says, and there is very little Neanderthal DNA around to work with, which is a challenge. But who might it have been? Could this mysterious ghost have been a hominin not ancestral to Homo sapiens, a line that split off, but before going extinct, introgressed with the modern humans in West Africa? That's a very likely model, Sankar Arman answers. Prehistoric liaisons dangerous. We have long.
Let me pause real fast before I lose you. Let me explain basically what's going on. So now, if you've seen, there's a couple of different studies that came out with Neanderthal DNA. If you actually look deep into those studies, they're just basically going to the roots of when you get Noah. There's a split of 3 lines. There's 3 lines, and they can be found today. That's why they talk about the Hamitic lines. They talk about the Shemitic lines and the Japhetic lines, which is going to be your Indo-European. That's very important to understand. Basically, what they're saying is that what they call African American has a genetic line that is special to their line. That's what they're saying here. They're actually saying that there's a certain genetic line that is different than any other line, special to their line. It's really interesting one to take a look into. Very interesting on these things. So you can see some things and whatnot when it talks about different breaking and everything. Maybe I'll go into this another time to go into this information and everything. But let me close this, as I don't want to get too far off to what we originally were talking about, as we're going a little far off. Let's focus on what we were talking about. Back to summarizing what we were talking about earlier. That video that I showed you today, that same video talked about this Y chromosome here that we broke down intensively into a great depth of understanding. But this video, if you ever get a chance to see it, is in the description, is absolutely phenomenal, because what it single-handedly does, it reveals to us that the line of what they call Ashkenazi, for the sake of understanding, is actually a Turkish line. Is actually a Turkish line. Understand when I say that. That is 100% in line with the understanding with many other things, because we can look at different strands of their Y chromosome and see that they are Turks, and they are also the Philistines. Very important to understand that the Khazars themselves are actually where they came from. That's actually who they came from. And now understand, the name Khazar is a name that was given to them, but they were of a branch of people who were originally Gog and Magog. Very important to understand that. But they are the Turks. That's who it is known by the language today on what they call them. They call them the Turks, the people that came up from the north area and actually took over that area, for the sake of understanding. Now, just to give it one more understanding of this, let's see. Where is it? Let me see. I'm gonna see if this is it. Okay, I want to show you one more thing. One more thing here. Let's see. 44. Okay, I'm gonna show you something. Here's another one where he talks about. This one was a little earlier before that one where he dedicated his study to finding out the what you call the Ashkenazi DNA. Before he wanted to find out the Ashkenazi DNA, he did a little historical information and everything, and he found out something interesting here. Let's see if I can.
Arab Muslim dynasty or empire. That's going to change quickly by 1000 BC when the Seljuk Turks start marching from up here down through here and over this way. If you look at the population density of the globe, again, that
all right,
major places
watch what happens here.
Have been remain that way. India, China, in the great Volkswanderung, the great movement, migration of peoples, where the actually this is already in the middle of that, where the Huns and others have come in here and wiped out what's going on. You've got the age of division in China that's going on in the Americas. I'm going to draw the Q and domination out of whoever was here before in the Americas. Q becomes the dominant lineage there. J begins its march out of whoever was here before in the Americas. Q becomes the dominant lineage there. J begins its march through from Central Asia back down through the Middle East. These are the Turkish peoples, displacing apparently the Arab Muslims, which were E1B1B. If you look at 900 BC, out here you have a Muslim, an Arab Muslim dynasty or empire. That's going to change quickly by 1000 BC when the Seljuk Turks start marching from up here down through here and over this way. If you look at the population density of the globe, again, the major places where the peoples have been remain that way: India, China, Europe, not so much sub-Saharan Africa, not so much Australia or the Americas. That's how things are looking back then. Fast forward another 500 years, the Black Death has come and gone.
This one happens really fast, but this is an interesting video to see too. This one is called Hidden History of the World. Basically find out the information about the genetics to see how people migrated and moved. The people, the Turks, pushed out the real Ishmaelites. They pushed them out into Africa. Notice that these were the real Ishmaelites. They were pushed out of this area and went to Africa. E1B1B, right? And you got E1B1A. That's going to be your Israelis. Remember, they had the same father. They came from the same father. Important to understand Arabs, Israel, the real Arabs, not the Turkish ones, which a lot of people, they see that if they look at Iran today, they'll say, oh, that's Ishmael. That's not. Those are Persians. Those are Persians, and those were, a lot of them were Turks, for the sake of understanding. They pushed them into the Africa. The people who were originally in this area were pushed down by those of the south. They were pushed down. So think of the Arabs, the real Ishmaelites, and then think of Israel. A lot of them, they were pushed down when the captivity started going on and the exiles and all those things was going on. They were pushed downwards. And that's why you see them down into this area over here. So it's very important to see some of those things. Very interesting video this is. Very, very interesting. A longer video to go over. I'm not going to sit and have you go over it. But it's a very interesting video to see on the history all the way back. Very, very interesting to get a good foundation on that one. Now, I want to go back to what I was talking about. Let me see. Let's go back to that video because I don't want to leave the point that we were just at. Let me just play this last part, and that's in it right here. Actually,
be dominant today.
It's right here. All right, so let me go to 31, 49. All right, so one more time. This is the summary of what we just looked at. Because I know some like to see the ending and just jump to the ending. But here's the answer to what we just reviewed. Here's the answer to what we just reviewed.
Okay. So who are the Jews? Who are modern day Jewish people? Well, it seems that a section, I should say, a subsection of modern Jews, along with many other Middle Eastern peoples, and some Europeans, like Greeks and other Balkan Peninsula folks, and Italians, and even some Spaniards at a low percentage, and even some Indians, all share a common Turkish heritage. They trace some of their origins to Central Asia. Not all of these people, but if you're in the Middle East, a heavy percentage of you do trace your origins via Group J to the Turkish people. And what we've seen in this episode is, once again, Central Asia seems to play this dominant role in.
Didn't I say this before? Didn't I say that this is the truth? Understand, what I'm providing for you is some of the most hardest finds that you can find today, but I'm revealing to you that the world itself know these things, and understand this is extremely important for what's about to happen. What's about to happen is going to be something where many people will say, well, I wish I had known this earlier so that I can be prepared mentally for such a transition, because there's going to be an extreme transition when the Lord comes back. And understand, this is the generation where it's about to happen. But let me show you something. Let me show you one more thing that actually is in unity with this thing. Because remember how I told you that? I told you, where is it? Let's see. I told you that these people, this Y chromosome and all these things, is known. It can't be denied. It's one of those things that can't be denied. Let's see on here. So I have I got to remember what picture this is always going to be under. But I want to show you a interesting video from the Library of Congress. And see if I can find it. If I can't, that'd be crazy. But I'm pretty sure I should be able to find it. The Library of Congress. I might have to type that on here next time I come to this thing. Just looking to see where I put that. That's the thing about making big notes. You make big notes and you gotta grab that from there somewhere. In fact, let me just slow down going down. I'm gonna look through each one because I want to show you this video, because it's what I just showed you. This is one geneticist who says that. There's another one who says the same thing. All right, this geneticist is 2020. This person is doing this study in 2020. I'm going to show you one. That's actually the one I want to find, but let me see. I want to find that timestamp. Okay, right here, 25, and let me show you this one. This is from the Library of Congress. You heard what he just said there, how they're the Turks? I want to show you this. What was it? 2555. Okay, watch this. He's going to say the same thing.
An allusion to the reference to their royal background. So now beyond the Ossetians, and that's why I chose these case studies, all of this, the Armenians who are A2, the Georgians and the Ossetians, the people then closest to them are, they are relatively numerous, and they all indicate various countries of Eastern Europe as place of origin. And all of these people are of Ashkenazi Jewish ancestry. In all likelihood, the connection between them and the I2C from the Caucasus must have taken place through the Khazars. It would be difficult to conceive of another possibilities. The relations between the Khazars and Ossetians in the Middle Ages are well known, not to mention the episodic Khazar invasions of Transcaucasia. So to conclude, thanks to a few people we have tested, a few tests, a little bit of saliva, this is what we have been able to determine. We have been able to find out the Y-DNA of the original Bagratid dynasty. The Georgians have been working on the Bagratid dynasty, but in the case of the Georgians, it's descent through female line because Queen Tamar married an Ossetian prince, David Soslan, and from then on it is the line of David Soslan. So they did some DNA testing, and they belong to the line of David Soslan belongs to the Q1 or something like this line. It's something which kills the Georgians, that their royal family is of Armenian origin, the Bagratian, and then from an Ossetian, David Soslan. It's really something very difficult for them to swallow. We have been able to find the origins of the house of Hachen, the Hassan Jalalian, so determine that they are in fact Bagratids and not Aranshahid or Sunni. The origins, we have been able to confirm the origins of the Tsitsishvili Panaskirteli princes. At some point I thought maybe they may be Mamedonian because type belonged to the Mamedonian before it passed to the Bagratids, but obviously they are Bagratids and not. We confirmed that the tradition of the Taraur aristocracy was not fiction, but it was they indeed have something Armenian and Bagratid on top of that. And also the links between Ossetians and Khazars. I mean, Ossetia, Alania was included as part of was vassal of the Khazar kingdom. And we have been able to establish that at least some Ashkenazi Jews are indeed of Khazar origin, because there is this discussion that are Ashkenazi Jews Khazars, or are they from the Jews which came from the Middle East? I cannot answer the question for all of them, but at least here at this micro level, we can see that some of them at least are of Khazar ancestry, because I cannot see how it could have been otherwise. So it's quite ironic findings, because there is this, Movses Khorenatsis says that the Bagratids were of Jewish origin. And it turns out that it is not so, but it's the other way around, that some Jews now are Bagratid origin. And also, you know, it was a Tsitsishvili Prince Tizianov, prevented the Armenian Melids from receiving the princely title.
So it's that fast. If you caught it, it just lets you know that the Ashkenazi are Khazars. That's what he just basically said. And this one's in 2020, right? This one's in 2020, and he just basically came to the same conclusion. He came to the same conclusion. He's letting you know that they're Turks. Those are the Khazars. Very important to understand, because how can we have the Turks that converted to Judaism? It's recorded in history. Let's see this ending real fast.
In the world history of peoples, we've seen other Central Asian lineages, R1A, R1B, due to Mongols, Magyars. Well, here the Turkish people are showing up in the Middle East. They have a dominant presence. They're about a quarter of the peoples in India. The fingers of Central Asia, even though they don't necessarily occupy much attention in the history of Western civilization, politically they don't play a huge role in Europe, but in terms of their DNA, massive echo in Europe, in the Middle East, significant imprint in India, and even now in North Africa. But could there still be an ancient Jewish lineage that we haven't yet discussed or haven't yet discovered? Could we find the Mosaic lineage, going back to Moses and Aaron, David, Solomon? Hope you join us in future episodes to find out. This is the new history of the human race, new windows into our past that we haven't been able to see before.
All right, thank you, family. I didn't mean to mute it. Let me what I wanted to show you here. I'm glad that I was muted because I was actually trying to find something real fast. But this is what I was talking about. You see this painting right here? Let me actually cut this name here and put it above it so that that's clear. Let me cut this out. Oh wait, I don't think I can. Okay, I open this on a thing. I'll move that later. I'll move that name. But you see that name right there? That's what this painting is. Let me see. Go back to that name. Go back to that. But it's called the King's Fountain. This painting is called the King's Fountain. It's in the 16th century. It's an oil painting. I'm gonna go up. That's what this is. This is in the 6th century. This oil painting right here is a very earlier system, and this is actually going to show you who the Sephardic Jews are. This is Spain, right? Spain. Let me actually open the map to show that location. Where is Spain on the map? Where is Spain? Right above Africa, because that's where they actually sent the Judeans. They sent them down to Africa when they was exiled. It's written in history. It's actually written, and I'm going to show you those things. So here's Spain. Right here, this is Portugal. Right here, this is going to be Portugal. This is Lisbon. Lisbon is where a lot of them was actually going through a lot of stuff they was going through, and they was being sent down into Africa. You can see it's not too far, not that far of a water to travel on. And they pushed them down into Africa. They're going to push them down into Africa, into lower Africa. So this is Spain. Let me show you something real fast. This is a painting from Portugal. This is a painting from Portugal. I showed you this painting earlier. And before I show you something very interesting in it, let me just zoom out a little bit. Before I show you something very interesting in it, let me zoom in a little more. Okay. Let me show you something real fast. I'm gonna reveal to you the evidence that the modern Jew is not the actual biblical or the Jews that were known in the time past. I'm going to show you that a Jew in Portugal had to wear a red cross. It was the Jew that had to wear a red cross. I'm going to show you something. I'm going to show you I'm going to show you three quotes. It's 3 historical quotes. So this is a historical quote. This is modern history of the Jews, right? You can see right here. This is 1814, right? 1814. This is before the Negroes were released from being slaves, right? Who were the actual Jews. Watch, I'm gonna show you something here. Watch what it quotes here in this book. I'm gonna go down. It's a quote from this book. I'm gonna read it to you. All right. It's gonna be talking about the Jews here. It's talking about how the Jews were and everything. I'm gonna go here. And even those converted by the fear of punishment. So it's talking about the Jews that converted because of fear of punishment, because the Inquisition was going on in Spain, in Portugal. It says, by the fear of punishment, no sooner left the church than they returned home to practice their own ceremonies, because in private, because they was practicing the Jewish ways in their private area. They circumcised their children, it's talking about the Jews, and kept the Passover in their houses. So the people in Spain, the Romans and all those people, they didn't want them to practice Judaism, but they were practicing Judaism. Informed of these partial conversations and sudden return to Judaism, the king basically sent some people. He sent basically somebody by the Pope, right? Sent why am I pronouncing that? This petition to the Pope, who ordered the Inquisition to be watchful. So now that the Inquisition was being watchful for the Jews, he sent something to the Pope, letting them know that they were still practicing Judaism, and to punish such as were negligent in their duties, right? I'm gonna go down a little bit. It just talks about a few things, enforcing Christianity and everything. The decree was exhibited in the cities of Spain, right? The decree was in Spain. So now we know it's gonna be a decree to these Jews in Spain that are practicing Judaism. Watch what happens here, what the Inquisition does. Watch what happens here. Going down a little bit, talks about the Jews return to Roman Catholics, 2000. They refused. Let me show you something real fast. Let me see, where is it? Boom, that right here. Okay, here it is. Let's get right to the meat. Some were enclosed in dungeons. So they caught some were put in dungeons. Watch what it says here. Watch what it says about the ones that were freed. It says, and when liberated, watch this, constrained to wear 2 red crosses. You heard what it just said there? Upon their clothes. And guess what color their clothes were? Their clothes were black. They actually had to wear black clothes, and they had to wear 2 red crosses on their clothes. Who had to wear red crosses? The Jews. That's the way to identify them on who they were. They had to wear those red crosses on their clothes. Now let me show you something. Let me show you something on this painting. Let's see who's wearing a red cross. Let me actually close this. And okay, let's go up. Same thing. All right, watch what it says. Watch this right here. Let me show you something. You see this picture right here? Show me who has a red cross on them. If you can find a red cross, you found a Jew. That's what you found. Let me show you something. Here he is. Let's take a look at this Jew right here. Let's take a look at what the history says is a Jew. You see this Jew? That's a Jew right there. Do you see that? That's important to understand. And why is he black? Why is this Jew black? Why is he black? Let me show you something. There's other historical evidences that actually lets us know why he's that color. Zoom out a little bit. I'm gonna show you other references. I'm gonna show you some other historical references. And I'm gonna show you that they actually know they got some bones of these Jews. And they know that their skulls are actually a certain skull shape. And I'm gonna show you that real fast. But first, let me show you a few references. Let me show you a few. I'm gonna show you this one, 624. This is a brother that did a study. This is, when I seen this, I just had to look into it myself. I had to look into myself to see if it was true, and it's indeed true. It's very, very interesting too. It's very, very interesting to see such things like this. But watch this quote.
It reads, "'Tis also a vulgar error that the Jews are all black, for this is only true of the Portuguese Jews, who, marrying always among one another, beget children like themselves, and subsequently the swarthiness or the blackness of their complexion is entailed upon their whole race." And just in case you're wondering what the word swarthy means, swarthy is of being a dark hue or dusty complexion, and this is a dictionary entry from an old dictionary. And you can see it also gives you an example.
Notice when it's talking about swarthy, notice that it's comparing it to the Moors. Why did the Jews, now understand, on this image that you're going to see here, the Jews had to wear black. Why did they have to wear black? It was to distinguish them between the actual Arab Moors, who are the Ishmaelites, to distinguish them between the Ishmaelites and who they are. That's why they had to wear black. And if you notice, that's something that the Ashkenazi picked up, and they're doing that today, wearing black. That's what they were actually forced to do in the Inquisition. They was forced to wear black in that time. But as you can see here, it's letting us know that swarthy was something that we've seen in these ones. But let's keep going.
How to use the word swarthy. It says black as the swarthy African. So Africans were associated or called swarthy. And also the Brus were referred to as very black or very dark, especially in Spain and Portugal, as the following reference reads, and it reads, "A tall, thin, very black man, like a Spaniard or a Jew, about 50 years old." So one important note, Spanish and Portuguese Jews weren't just brown colored. They were dark brown, close to black. In fact, they were blacker than some Africans. And when they mixed with the Africans to produce mulattoes, some of the first generation descendants were darker than the Africans. As the following reference reads, and it reads, "The Portuguese who planted themselves on the coast of Africa a few centuries ago have been succeeded by descendants blacker than many Africans." Now, this anonymous painting depicts life in Lisbon, Portugal in the 1500s. During this time, the Jews who embraced Christianity were forced to wear a red cross on their upper garment. Now, in this painting, you can see a gentleman on the bottom right riding a horse wearing a red cross of the converted Jews. And notice his skin color is close to black. Now, another description of these Spanish and Portuguese brews involves their skull. When viewing the Dawid look like, men in black. As the following reference reads, and it reads, not only were they nigger black, they also dressed in black. The Jews of Spain and Portugal were the original men in black. As the following reference reads, and it reads, the Almohad ruler Abu Yosef Yacob is said to have introduced at the end of his reign an innovation with regard to the shukla, cloak-like garment of the Jews, because they were dressing like Muslims, and even like the most noble of them, in a manner which made them indistinguishable from the servants of Allah. Therefore, Jews were henceforth required to dress in the fashion of mourning among Muslims, dark blue or black, and the size of the sleeves they could wear was limited, only long enough to reach the feet. And they were required to wear black cloaks and black caps. And once they became new Christians, they were required to wear a red cross on that garment. It reads, there is a gentleman being burned in the city square via an auto de fe. And we can also see this in our references where it says, at the place of execution, which at Lisbon is Ribeira, there are many stakes set upon there are prisoners to be burnt. And for an additional reference, we show that the Jews who were forcibly converted to Christianity were required to wear an identifying mark on their upper garment. And the following reference reads, and it reads, the decree which was published in most parts of Spain filled the Jews with such consternation that 17,000 immediately returned to the church and submitted themselves to whatever censure or penance should be inflicted. 2,000 of this miserable people, part of whom confessed that Jesus Christ was the true Messiah, were still put to death. Many were sentenced. Now, for a quick note, just notice that the Jews, even though they confessed Christ, they were still put to death. As stated in the previous videos, the Jews weren't being persecuted by the Red Dragon for merely following the Messiah. The Jews were being persecuted because they were following the Messiah and because they were following the laws, statutes, and commandments of the Most High God. All right, well, let's continue with this reference. And it reads, many were sentenced to a long imprisonment, and after regaining their liberty, were ordered to wear 2 red crosses on their upper garment. And we can see in this painting, this gentleman has a red cross on his upper garment. And then last but not least, let's read a quick reference which discusses the color of these Jews that are in Portugal. And it reads,
All right, so did you just see that? Now, besides the other evidences, I'll show you one more piece of evidence. One more piece of evidence. So we know that the Jews actually are the ones that were required to wear the red cross. So there was no one else wearing the red cross besides the Jews, not the Moors, not anyone else. It was the Judeans that had to wear that red cross to distinguish them between the Moors. And do you see any Moors on here? Let me show you something. You can see here, some people in the background. You see that person with the thing on their head and everything. You see what's going on here. They had Moors here. They had actual Ishmaelites that was in these backgrounds. They had Ishmaelites there. There would be Ishmaelites in the background, but this is a Jew. This is 100% a Jew based on the references of historical references. Very important to understand that. Now let's talk about the skulls. Let's talk about the skull shape. Now I'm going to show you something that even people that studied skulls were very confused with the findings of what happened with some of the skulls. Let me show you something just to show you a little bit quick study on the skull real fast.
We now start with the cephalic index. We have brachycephalic, broad, short, common among Mongolians and Andaman Islanders. Mesocephalic are nearly oval. Such scales are typical Europeans and Chinese. Dolichocephalic are typical Australian Aborigines and native Africans. We learn in anthropometry, which is where anthropology comes from, that we study race not by skin color actually, but by bone structure. How else can they determine the race of a tribe or a civilization unless they dig up the bones? They don't have any skin tissue samples. That's why the Indians on subcontinent India are actually Caucasian, yet they have very black skin.
Yeah, that's really interesting studies that came out that found out that the Indians, you know how they say the white man killed the Indians and took their land? Well, actually, the Indians are actually the same race as them. They may be different colors, but actually the Indians are actually a black white man, for the sake of understanding. Very important to understand that color of skin doesn't actually tell you who they actually are. Very important to understand. So it's very interesting that they found that out. If you ever get a chance to see, the migration is known on how the Indians actually got there. They actually went from right here. See this little area right here? They actually crossed over. They were up here and they crossed over here, as you see, and then they went and then they dwelled in that America. So they dwelled in area. So they crossed over there and they went in and they dwelled in these areas. So, and some actually even came from some areas over here, like different areas. So these are actually very closer than they seem, for the sake of understanding. So these ones would have came to this area and they went as well in these areas. They was actually the Europeans. They was actually European. Shockingly, very important to understand that. Very shocking, very interesting. But let me show you something. Let me close this. Okay, so now let me show you something on the skulls. Let me show you something. The skulls that were of the Sephardic Jews, let me show you, let me read you this. This is going to be Fine Dictionary. It just talks about that Dolichosophatic. It talks about the West African Negroes present an example of the Dolichosophatic skulls. Guess who else had Dolichosophatic skulls? Right? Because you can't have a change within 500 years of a skull. Understand that. But the skulls of most of the Sephardim or Spanish Portuguese Jews, where's Portugal? Right there, right? The Spanish Portuguese Jews, the ones that we just read about, the ones in Portugal right here in Spain. That's what it says, what kind of skulls they had. It says, let me actually go back to this. Let me move this at the end. Actually, let me close that. We don't need that. All right, it says, right here, it says, but the skulls of most of the Sephardim or Spanish and Portuguese Jews are Dolichosophatic. See what's happening there? Let me show you something. Let me show you what they said in the study of their own study of skulls. This is a study right here. You can see a little bit on this interesting study. I'll maybe open it and show you where this is quoting from. Right here, these are common. Right here, I'm gonna go down a little bit. So I'm gonna show you what they're talking about. Human biology, Jewish genetic origins in the context of past historical and pretty much the study of the skull. I'm gonna show you something here. So University of California, I'm gonna show you what they find here. Let me close this. Let's go down a little bit. Okay, watch what it says here. So they're studying the skull and they find out something interesting. It says this: Jacob's characterization of Jewish skulls was widely supported by other what's that? Kramer, I'm going to try to pronounce it. Nevertheless, for those like Jacob who subscribe to a theory of Jewish racial purity. Now understand this. Why is he talking about racial purity? Because if you follow what the Bible says, now a lot of people, they go to the time of Ezra and say, oh, see, they mixed in with the other people. Read the book of Ezra. Ezra 10. Ezra 10 says they cut off all the people that mingled and mixed with the other people. Judea, the Judeans, Israel, a lot of them were pure for a long time, especially when we talk about Judah. Benjamin, Levi, they're going to be Israelites. It's important to understand. That's why they say racial purity, that they're not mingled with a lot of different races. When you think about the male line, very important to understand that. So he's talking about that racial purity, and watch what it says. It says, look at this group right here. This is a skull group. Let me actually show you a picture right here. This is going to talk about this skull group. This is actually the Ashkenazi. This is who they call the Sephardim. Who they call Sephardim, this is the Ashkenazi. They're not Doikosophatic. None of them are Doikosophatic. Let me show you something. Even they recognize it here. They talk about that needs an explanation. Watch what it says here. It says the present day, I don't know, he said bronchia. I don't know if I'm going to try to pronounce it, but that's that skull, that first skull of the Jews require explanation. He says the present day skulls of the Jews require explanation. You see what it's saying there? Let me see, make sure you hear me. Amen. I had that open to that exact. Amen. That's amen. Yep. So isn't that something where it's saying that? It's saying that the present day, because he's saying, how can their skulls be different than their skulls if they're supposed to be the same Jews? They're supposed to be the same family. I just showed you that they're Turks. And that's why their skulls are not the same. Their skull shapes are not the same. That's why it says it requires explanation. For if modern Jews were directly descended from ancient Hebrews and they were Semitics, why then did modern Jews not display the same Doikosophatic long head characteristics as other modern day Shemites, such as Arabs or Sephardic Jews? You know what they're just saying there? They're saying that the Ashkenazi, by their skull shapes, by their genetics, by their linguistics, by the historical evidence, by all these different evidences, they're not actually from the line of Shem. They're not from the line of who they say they are. That's who they're lying. That's what's going on here. They're lying, and they know it. They know that they're lying, right? They know that they're lying. That's why it's important to understand when they try to find a reason. Look at the reasons they try to say. He says there were two possible answers. Perhaps modern Jews were not purely Semitic and had intermarried on a large scale. Oh. Or perhaps the ancient Hebrews were themselves, they try to say, oh, they was actually this skull right here. Obviously not, because the evidence actually points otherwise. This is actually one of those things that we ourselves actually understand that is true, because it says the distinguished German, basically just talk about here, maintenance, that this skull, right? That this skull right here, seen in modern Jews, were the result of a large scale intermarriage between ancient, because they say ancient Hebrews were Doikosophatic, ancient Doikosophatic, and try to say some Hittites. They basically try to say that they try to, and understand this is not supported genetically. This claim is not supported genetically, nor is it supported in any type of way. They didn't mix with the Hittites. That's never recorded in the Bible at all. You can't take the words of the Bible and take them out and try to twist them. They try to say that they mixed in with the Hittites. We know that's a lie. But that's their reason. They say perhaps all these things are not supported. Just know that the answer here is this. It's important to understand this. For if the modern Jews are directly descended from ancient Hebrews, which are Doikosophatic, and they are Shemites, they're Shemite, right? Why then did modern Jews not display the same Doikosophatic long head characteristics as modern day Shemites, such as Arabs, the real Arabs, which are coming from Abraham, or Shemitic, or the Sephardim Jews, right? That's why it's important to understand that they couldn't find a reason. That's why I said it requires explanation right there. The present day skull shape of Jews requires explanation. That's what they're saying here. Let's go down and I'll show you that this is true, that their skull shapes are that right here. You can see this study in Britain, 1885. Jacob address. He talks about the skull shapes, reporting that based on basically 100,000 measurements of Jews, 120,000 a measurement of Ashkenazi Jews. It says they were predominantly this one. Predominantly this one. See what's going on there? That's what they're saying there. So the Ashkenazi Jews are not the ancient Jews. Understand that. They're not the ancient Jews by these finds. By these evidences, they are not the ancient Jews. So you can see here, you can see this is a real site. This is a direct site for the research. So to show you what these things, this is talk about the actual information and everything. You can see right here, Ashkenazi, that's what they are. Versus the modern day, the so-called, the ones that they call Sephardim, the 8%, which is actually another skull shape. So the ones that are actually, as I showed with the genetics, got to be careful on who they call Sephardim Jews. The real Sephardim, you'd be surprised on who they are. If here's a picture. This is a Jew. This is a doctor Jew. This is a Jew that's a doctor, for the sake of understanding. And he is, as you see, a darker skin tone. Very important. If you've never seen, maybe one day I'll talk about this one. This is an interesting one. This Judean Jew right here. Very interesting one. Maybe I'll show a real quick example. 27 and 20. I just want to show you a real quick example here.
He's descended from one of three sons of Gedaliah. And so it's clear that he actually traveled in these Muslim courts. He offered his services to sultans like this one. This is the Sultan of Ahmednagar, Hussein Nizam Shah. And we do know from a number of indications on the other side, though Garcia the author is never mentioned by name, that Europeans were present in these courts, and that these courts often use them for a number of different purposes, above all for two things, as doctors and as mercenaries and artillerymen. Right?
So now I'm going to show you that he tried to blend in. He tried to blend in with Black Jews of India. That's what he tried to blend in with. I'm going to show you that that's where he tried to go. He tried to blend in with them. Watch what happens here.
Prominent Jewish advisors, right? Some of whom were Jews from India of long standing, what would often later on be called Black Jews, but there were also Sephardic Jews who were present over there. Jews from India of long standing, what would often later on be called Black Jews, but there were also Sephardic Jews who were present.
You see what's going on here? If you do a little study on this, you'll find out that there's a lot of cover-ups and a lot of things going on. You can find out who these Black Jews are, though. This is a real thing. The Black Jews were someone that they know was, they say, of the Kohanim. Very interesting that the Black Jews were of the Kohanim, because they actually tried to claim that the Kohanim is the Ashkenazi, that some of the lines of the Ashkenazi would be Kohanim. But that's obviously false, for the sake of understanding. We already looked at those genetic information. We know that certain line of them that's actually of the Khazars, of the Turks. So very interesting with some of these things. Very, very interesting to see. Very, very interesting to take note of these things and come to the conclusion of the truth. Understand what I'm telling you this. And understand that's how they left Portugal, because few people know this. The Jews in Portugal were pushed down into Africa. They were pushed down into Africa. It is no doubt. It is without a doubt that they were pushed down into Africa. You can see it right here. Watch what it says here. They had to leave. Watch what it said. This is actually let me show you this. This is from the Jewish source, right? Jew think, right? So it's just showing you where this source is. It just talks about the expulsion of the Jews in 1497. What happened in 1497? The Jews were expelled. They was to leave Spain. And guess where they went? Africa. I'm going to show you that they went into Africa from their own sources. Remember how I was talking about how they were dealing with the Jews and the Moors, the actual ones that they looked the same, but they had to wear different things. One had to wear a cross on them. Let's look at here. Let's see what they say about these Jews. I'm gonna show you something. I'm gonna show you where they were sent to. It says, after that period, they had to leave the country, although the king only allowed them to travel to Grain, and let's see what these areas are. You see this word right here? Just to show you, that's on here. So here's a decree. This is the decree that was made. You can see what it said here. They made a decree. It says right here, signed by the Catholic king and everything. This was a decree to expose them, to give them an expulsion, to make them leave, right? Let me show you something. All right. So you'll see, it'll talk about here. It says they had to leave the country, although the king only allowed them to travel to, note these two areas. Let's see where this area is. Let's see where this area is. I don't know if I can put it here. Let me see if I can find something on this. See that? Macaroon. See where they had to go? Africa. They went down to Africa. And from here, they say a lot of them tried to return, and a lot of them actually just kept going into Africa, deeper into Africa. You can see right here, see where they only was allowed to go into, not upwards, but they had to go down into Africa. This was one of the places. I'll show you the other place. Let me close this. We don't need this. I'm gonna close this. We don't need this. And here's the other place. Here's another one. Right there. So this is where they was only allowed to go, into Africa. They was only allowed to go into Africa. So once they got here, they made their way here. And then you'll see some later history where they actually made their way all the way down to here, to these areas. And when they got down to these areas, that's when they were sent into the slave trade. Guess who initiated the slave trade? Guess who initiated? Spain. Spain was the one that initiated the slave trade. This area right here is the one that initiated the slave trade, shot the Jews down, took the Jews from their port, from this port. This is one of the ports that the Spain had. Spain had a port here. Actually, I don't know if I have it. Maybe I got a little reference video. Not this one. But it's a little interesting one of Spain, and how Spain grew and everything. I'm just looking to see if I do, just to see, because sometimes it's nice to even get those little understandings. Let me see, just making sure to see if I did or didn't. Probably didn't. That's all right. Oh, maybe here. I don't think this will have those little things though. Okay, so okay, here, this is it. Notice these ports right here. You see these ports right here? Here's Spain. Note the year there. Go up a little bit. So you see where they first got these ports? You can see they're getting these ports here, right here. These are the ports you want to look at. Right here. So you're going to take these areas. This is going to belong to Spain. So another area right here. So then comes the slave trade. Is coming up. In fact, it's some already going down. Remember, they went down here. They're making their way. They're going down. They're settling these areas. They're settling these different areas over here. Because this is also where their people was down into there. These areas was where they was actually sent down into. Very important to understand that. And then you're going to notice that Spain is going to take some areas over here, because that's what they're doing. They're sending them over here. That's what they're doing. They're settling them in the land, and then later on you're going to see they're going to settle them in areas over here. As all these are going to take part in the slave trade. They're going to buy the slaves, and they're going to start moving them. So you can see going on there. You got different areas. And remember, they're selling the slaves to all that types of different countries. So this is not going to be a migration of the slaves. obviously this is actually going to be what happened. So that year I wanted you to look at was that port down here. That was where the slave coast is. That area right there, that's where the slave coast is. That's why I showed you on those maps, the slave coast. So you can look at those up. You can look at the Kingdom of Judah. You can look at those different areas, and those are the areas that they own. So that's where they sent them. They sent them down into Africa. So it's very important to note that. So the Jews went down into Africa. During the exile of Israel, a lot of them went down. A lot of them think that they went this way, but rather they went down here and went down this way. That's why some of the slaves you get from here too. So that's what happened, as it says, from the rivers of Ethiopia, beyond the rivers of Ethiopia shall I gather my exile, right? So you can see they went down here to Negro land. They went into different areas, different nations where they were sent. Some were also sent here to these little islands, and they were sent out. So it's very important to see some of those things. I wanted to show you this one of the skull. I'll show you this one real fast of the skull.
The skulls of medieval Spanish and Portuguese brews, they were identified as dolichocephalic, which is the skull of the present-day Negro. The skulls of the Ashkenazi, on the other hand, are not dolichocephalic. Now,
so that was just what I just touched on and everything. I'm close this. All right, we don't need that. We don't need these. So now this is how we're going to end this for the sake of understanding. I wanted to go over this information because touching on these things, I want to just show you that these things are sure. These are actually sure things. I'm going to end it with this video. What I'm going to show you is
some of my recent work.
I'm going to show you make sure I hear me. Okay. I'm going to show you a saying that is said by this person. He's a British historian. He's a writer and everything and whatnot. And I'm going to show you what he says about his studies of Jews. I'm going to show you what his study is when it comes to Jews. So he studied at Harvard University, Harvard College and whatnot. He also studied some things on the African American people. He was studying them. And guess what he came to the conclusion of? I'm going to show you his answer here, what he came to the conclusion of.
If you read the Harvard report very attentively, you'll have to go to the footnotes. You will see there's got a lot of evidence produced for Black Jewish communities in different parts of West Africa, which are not sort of based upon a particular reading of tribal history, let's put it like that, but are based on fairly hard historical fact. And this hard history from Spain and from Portugal at the end of the 15th century, subsequent to which a lot of Jews settled, first of all, in northwest Africa, places like Senegal, in the islands, which I'm sure you know about, Saint Tomé and Principe.
Yes, sir.
Principally. And then, less known, along the coast of Guinea, so that in the middle of the 16th century, 1560 to be precise, the Portuguese Archbishop of Goa.
I got a quick quote that
middle of the 16th century, the coast of Guinea.
Okay, so you see where he says the coast of Guinea? Let me show you something. I forgot you spelled Guinea. I'm gonna look. G-U. Let me show you something. Okay, so where's the coast of Guinea? Here's Guinea. You see what he's saying here? He's saying from this area. Remember, I showed you maps of the slave coast. Some of these older maps won't show you the real names that they had here. The Kingdom of Judah, Benjamin, right? Benny, For the sake of understanding, they had a lot of those people down here, the kingdom of Judah and whatnot. This is Guinea, right? This is going to be Guinea, the new maps of Guinea. This is what Portugal's had. This is the area that Portugal had. Very few understand this type of history. But let me show you something, what he's going to say here. Watch what he says here to end this. Watch what he says here.
So that in the middle of the 16th century, 1560 to be precise, the Portuguese Archbishop of Goa in India proclaimed that Judaism is a kind of horrible illness which has killed millions of people throughout history, and the result of being Jewish was to be covered in shame, to fail in everything, even among the Black Jews of Guinea. So, in other words, the existence of Jews in the western part of Africa was absolutely accepted at the time by the likes of the Portuguese Archbishop of Goa.
So do you understand what it just said there? He just said it is historically confirmed that one of the leaders in Goa, which is going to be where you can see, where is it? Right here, India is where Goa is going to be, right here. One of the leaders over there that also reigned the area of Portugal, he recognized that there were Jews that had to get destroyed, that he wanted to destroy in West Africa. In this areas, in what they called Guinea, right here, where the slave coast is, where I just showed. Remember, kept showing those maps of the kingdom of Judah. You can look it up yourself, right? Kingdom of Judah, slave coast, right? This is Guinea. You see? You can see it on the map. This is going to be down here. This is a real ancient map. See right there? They knew for a fact that there were Jews, kingdom of Judah, down here in Guinea. There were Jews down here. And I guarantee you trace their Y chromosome, you'll find out what's really going on. Remember what Scripture said? What you think Messiah is a liar? You think Messiah lied? This is Guinea. Messiah said they shall fall by the edge of the sword and shall be led into captivity into all nations until the time of the Gentiles come in. If you've never seen the Islamic slave trade, if you've never seen this transatlantic, the triangular slave trade, then you're probably not living on Earth. We all know that there's been a slave trade, and these people went into every single nation, as Messiah has said. They shall fall by the edge of the sword and shall go into all nations. In fact, there's an Old Testament scripture that said there will be not one nation they will not go into. That's what he said in the Old Testament. Now, understand this when I say this. I'm going to say this, and I'm going to leave it like this. The Ashkenazi are liars, period. They're liars. They're not who they say they are, and they're not believing in the Messiah. Now, if they convert and they choose Messiah, and the Messiah spares them, then that's Messiah's choice. What do you want us to do with them? But anyone who's trying to justify their flesh with a lie will be put to shame. Understand this. I don't care what the answers point to, where the truth points to, that's what we're going to bring out. Wherever the truth brings, that's what we're going to bring out. I don't care if it said this thing or that thing. We just want the truth. That's all that we want. So at the end of the day, what I wanted to show you is that all types of professionals are in agreement with the actual evidence, not the modern day lies, but the actual proof, the actual evidence shows that the real Judeans, the real people that were actually Judeans, are the people today everyone calls a byword. This is indeed Jeremiah 17:4 come to life. So with that, family, I just wanted to show you this thing, that's why we spoke about these things, and that many people actually know these things. So with that, family, if any questions, let me know. If not, be blessed, be beloved, and amen.